Welcome to Product Marketing Alliance and thanks for tuning in. While we're waiting to go live, for those of you that are new to PMA, let's take a whistle-stop tour of what it is that we actually do. Our community. We're home to more than 10,000 product marketers across the world, and every single day, tons of product marketing specific conversations go down. The community is an absolute wealth of knowledge and answers, and a constant place of inspiration. We publish several industry reports a year, and in them we look at everything from the main responsibilities of product marketing to the average salaries across the world, to how those in the C-suite view and value our role. On our content platform, we and industry specialists are adding new articles every single day so that you can get your fix on everything from positioning all the way through to OKRs. We've got 2 podcasts on the go where we speak to product marketers from all over the world about everything from how they got into the industry to what a day in the life looks like for them. Product Marketing Fix, our very own product marketing streaming service, has new video footage added every week and includes everything from presentations to Q&As. And then there's Ask Me Anythings. Every other week, we put PMMs from organizations like Google, IBM, and SurveyMonkey under the spotlight to answer all your burning questions. Then there's our membership plans. You get access to an ever-growing bank of templates and frameworks, exclusive content from influential industry leaders, hundreds of hours of product marketing presentations, our mentorship program, and much more. Product marketing certification covers 11 essential modules on the A to Z of product marketing. You'll be given exams throughout, hours of bonus footage, live weekly workshops, and official certification at the end. Keep your eyes peeled too, there are plenty more masterclass courses coming. Our product marketing jobs board is the only recruitment resource dedicated solely to PMMs. And companies like HubSpot, LinkedIn, and Typeform trust us to find their talent. Our partners over at Product Marketing World tour the globe with their summits year-round. And outside of that, we have Meetup ambassadors who organize local gatherings at least once a quarter. If you want to start building your personal profile and putting your words in front of industry enthusiasts, our blog gets hundreds and thousands of hits every month, making it the perfect place to showcase your work. Not only that, we have our product marketing awards, our ambassador program, our newsletters, and our tools directory. We really are, dare I say it, a one-stop shop. That's all for now, so let's get stuck in with today's LinkedIn Live.
It is a pleasure to be here, albeit online, with the global product marketing community at this year's Product Marketing Festival. And I'm excited to use this time to really talk about one of my favorite topics, which is building world-class go-to-market teams that live at the middle of your organizations. And so we're going to be using today to dive into the launch process, the different types of product marketers, personas, if you will, and the general playbook that we've used at G2 to build an award-winning GTM function. And so for a look at today's agenda, really quickly, I'll go ahead and introduce myself, and then we'll do an overview of what life looks like at the middle of product marketing and sales for the modern product marketer, which I'm sure a lot of you are today. And then we'll dive into G2's go-to-market blueprint, which encompasses everything that I just mentioned, our hiring process, our go-to-market process, and even the way that we report on success, all so that you can build a world-class go-to-market team as well. And then we'll finish with some time for questions. I see here on the right of my screen, we have a bit of a chat function, so feel free to put those in as you'd like, and I'll just keep an eye on those throughout the session. And so with that, let's get started. So first, a little bit about me. My name is Yoni, and I run product marketing and go-to-market at G2. And for a little on us, we're the world's largest marketplace for B2B technology. And before coming to G2, I've spent nearly a decade in B2B software for some of Chicago's top software companies. And when I'm not doing product marketing, I love writing about it in Forbes. I love talking about it in other publications. And my team at G2 was actually the winner of the PMA's Team of the Year last year as well. And I was lucky enough to make the top 50 product marketing influencers list too. But basically what my team and I do all the live long day is live at the middle of G2's product, marketing and sales organizations in something that we like to call the intersection. All right. So let's talk a little bit about what that means. So this should look familiar to a lot of folks who are living and breathing product marketing every day. It is our job as product marketers to essentially bring it all together, right? We live at the intersection of product, marketing, and sales. But that said, we're not quite product, we're not quite sales, and we're honestly not quite traditional marketing, digital or demand gen either, right? Not in that traditional sense of the word. But ultimately, what we help drive value for when we work for organizations is we align with all three of those functions to ensure that one, product is building the capabilities that are aligned to the real pains and problems that people are feeling in the market. Two, we help ensure that marketing has the context and then the messaging that they need to drive campaigns that essentially drive demand. And three, we then work with sales and with CS, really account management, to ensure that they have the context, the pricing, the resources, and the tools that they need to actually sell those products and capabilities in. And it's not easy, right? Life at the intersection can take a toll, which is why success in product marketing starts and ends with having a strong and versatile team with a diverse set of skills and expertise and natural leanings that we're going to talk a lot about today. Along with having a strong team, I think one of the most important things that we can establish is building a really strong playbook for launching products and capabilities, one that's consistently managed and run from end to end, and also one that everyone at the intersection of product, marketing, and sales are completely bought into, so that everybody across your organization knows exactly what they need to do and when they need to do it to ensure a successful GTM. But when it all works, all of that rigor and process can make a world of difference. And I think hopefully we can all see the image here, but this was actually our PMA Team of the Year award that's blacked out on the screen. But it can not only make a world of difference to your organization in terms of driving results, but it can actually help you launch faster. We found last year, for instance, that we as a team of three went to market with an average of one go-to-market per year. That was 2 M&As, products, features, integrations in our last fiscal year. It also helps you train and enable more and consistently and comprehensively. So all in all, we averaged about a 95% certification completion on all certifiable go-to-market activities last year and this year for that matter too. We're tracking really well against that. And that's also greatly reduced the time to first closed won for whatever it is that our teams are launching. And then finally, and this gets me really excited, when done right, great product marketing can utterly transform your business and results. And so, for some perspective on last year, which was our first year together as a team, we crushed our top line leads goal by about 400%. All in all, that made up about 20% of marketing's overall pipeline influence. And then we dug a little bit deeper and analyzed the deals that we were influencing. And from those deals, opportunities that just had one G2 touch point with a webinar that we were running or a thought leadership piece that we had delivered or landing pages and campaigns for products that we had launched, we found that those deals were about 40% larger, 37 to 40% larger on average, and actually twice as likely to get to closed won than the G2 average. And all in all, this resulted in several $1 million in revenue influence per head in product marketing, which is just fantastic. It's exciting, right? But there's a lot that goes into building that machine to make sure that it can function in that way. And so now that we've done a quick overview on what life at the intersection is like, at least from my perspective at G2, let's talk about how we actually built and in many ways are still building and refining and enhancing that GTM engine at G2. So I feel like I wouldn't be a product marketer if I didn't try to put everything into value pillars constantly. I prefer everything in threes. And so here are the 3 value pillars for G2's product marketing function. It starts, of course, with hiring the right team. And remember, no 2 product marketers are the same. And we're about to go into some real detail on that. We then, in pillar 2, enforce a uniform process and consistency from launch to launch so that everybody knows what to expect. And then we end, no pun intended, with end-to-end business outcome tracking that spans the entirety of our funnel and also helps drive those much needed metrics for our friends within product, marketing, and sales as well. And so with that, let's first talk about team building. I think this is really interesting because with product marketing being generally less known or a less recognized function as a whole, especially when compared to brand, content, or demand gen. And I think I saw from some data come out from the PMA just yesterday that only 5% of product marketers really feel like their organizations know what they do. And so as a result, one of those common misconceptions that we have with the role is that it's a one-size-fits-all kind of deal. And after several years in the function myself, both as a team manager and as a launcher, I gotta disagree. In fact, in my experience, I've actually come across 5 different types of product marketers that I'd like for all of you to be aware of and introduce you to today. And by the way, this persona blueprint helped me build my own team at G2. And so every single persona that you're gonna see here is actually represented on our product marketing team today. And so with that, let's go through them. First up is the storyteller. This product marketer truly understands our buyers and their problems and can articulate these problems in just a magical way that resonates. And they do this in the form of killer foundational messaging and positioning and can really crush deep persona work. That foundational messaging, or G2, what we call message houses, are the source for all marketing materials that follow. So this is going to inform your landing pages. This is going to inform your emails, your press releases, and everything else. And so having a product marketer that's truly best in class at writing value messaging and causing customers to care and share and convert in those stories is hugely successful is hugely important when launching successful GTM campaigns. All right, up next is my personal favorite and should need no introduction is the performer, represented by Freddie Mercury. And the core skill that they bring to the table, well, these are going to be your experts, in-person enablers of the capabilities and the tools and the stories really that you're rolling out to your teams. They just get it. They're these expert storytellers who understand the ways and the nuances of connecting with your people-facing teams in sales and CS. They just understand how they learn. And not only that, but they understand how to get those teams really excited and they deliver fun trainings that are retained in memory and then used on the front lines. They inspire through their energy and through their craft, enthusiasm and product market confidence from the sales org, which is why some really interesting success indicators for this persona in particular is going to be some stuff that they work along side by side with sales enablement. So that's going to be measuring time to first deal, or deal velocity, if you will. And I think for the candidates for this role, some of the best folks that I've ever come across are actually candidates that don't come from a traditional product marketing or marketing background. I, for instance, definitely have a performer in my team. And when she's not at G2 launching the heck out of products, she's actually one of Chicago's most well-known wedding singers. She fronts a really successful wedding band here in Chicago and is just a natural performer in that regard. Up next is a face that everybody should know. He might just be the most famous product marketer of all time, and it's Steve Jobs. But the persona that he represents is the evangelist. This is your ultimate product expert. And I found at organizations that these are the team members who've typically been there the longest. Maybe they started in CS and just understood the product and the customers really well, and they just naturally moved into product marketing. And because they know the nooks and crannies, right, the ins and outs of everything that you're doing, they write incredible user guides and FAQs. Their objections handling work is outstanding. And because they're so close to the product, they're actually in a really ideal position to understand how to manage KPIs around product launch satisfaction, capturing feedback on releases, and even managing your beta groups. Up next, I think, is my fiance's favorite persona of the bunch. So please meet the strategist. And really, to ensure that we have a successful GTM launch, we're all going to need one of these at the least. These personas are experts in bringing those GTM concepts that we see in message houses to life. they can just look at a message house and they can, in the moment, conceptualize how to introduce that new value story to the world. They're experts in terms of execution. They truly shine when they bring those creative campaigns and those defined segments and those workflows to the table. And they know how all three of those things work well enough to work very closely with your ops and demand gen team to actually get these things launched. So that's why a focus on pipeline creation is an influence really is a very interesting KPI for this type of persona. And when you're looking for this type of product marketer, look for folks with a background in growth or project management or ops. Maybe even early in their career, they worked at an agency or had implemented a marketing automation tool. So they just have an understanding of how this stuff works. But whatever background it is, these are the folks that have the expertise that you'll need to bridge the gap between product marketing and messaging, if you will, to go to market, to ensure that these campaigns are brought to life effectively. And then finally, I think this one's my personal favorite. I'm a Chicago Bulls fan, but meet the playmaker. This is one of the hardest product marketing personas to come across, but it's a really critical one to have nonetheless. And similar to MJ, you can just give these product marketers the ball and just get the heck out of the way, and they're going to find the revenue and the attribution that you need. For whatever reason, these product marketers are exceptionally and naturally close to the sales organization. Perhaps they're former SDRs, maybe former revenue ops or enablement pros who have since moved over to product marketing. But ultimately, what they understand best is how your sales cycle operates, where the opportunities for revenue lie, and even when the best time to launch products is. And they're amazing partners and collaborators with sales. And so ultimately, we benchmark these personas against things like closed won that spans new business, renewal, and upsell. And they're great, by the way, for leading won-loss analysis along with your product managers. And now, granted, if you have a good, solid product marketing team, they should hopefully be able to play in all of these areas and do them pretty well. But that said, by having a versatile team of folks who just kind of balance each other out, like maybe they're best in class in 2 to 3 of these areas, and in others, they're still developing. But as a result, the other folks who sort of have those strengths that your other product marketers may not have, they all balance each other out really well. And it creates an environment where no one's skills are duplicative, and they can help up-level each other and take value stories from one side and really take those value stories and capabilities and run all the way through the end with them, which ultimately ends in revenue and adoption and satisfaction and a whole ton of joy for your teams. Up next, let's talk pillar number 2, which is enforcing a uniform and consistent GTM process for launches. And this is, of course, for the sake of keeping our go-to-market activities as unchaotic and ultimately as successful as possible. That's really important. And so along with hiring and building out the team, this was the very first thing that I implemented at G2 when I joined the org about 1.5 years ago. And so here's a look at our go-to-market playbook in really 5 easy stages. It's worked so well for us that we've actually taken it and published it on our learn.g2.com site. It's available to everyone, and I think it's been downloaded over 500 times, which is amazing to see. But these stages encompass 5 key steps. Let's start with ideation. Step 1. This is where product believes they've identified a solution or a problem in the market that can be solved with a technology solution. When we've accepted that we're going to move forward with that, and it's a good idea, we enter phase 2, which is build. This is where product has officially put this new capability on their roadmap. And in parallel, we've put it on our go-to-market roadmap as well. Product marketing is now working on messaging, on naming, where it sits in the product hierarchy, planning out beta groups, all while getting the go-to-market plan for this thing built. We then enter stage 3, which is soft launch or beta. There are a couple different names for it that I've seen in past lives, but basically what we do here is we work with a select group of customers to ensure that both functionality, like does it work the way it's supposed to, along with messaging, are we talking about it in a way that makes sense and resonates? We make sure that both of these things are aligned with market needs and expectations before we move into stage 4, which is go-to-market launch. And I think if you were to have a blind test of what most people associate with a product launch happening, it's probably stage 4, right? The keys are in the ignition, landing pages and press releases and emails are all out. Like we're now moving on this launch. We've enabled sales, all of that good stuff in stage 4. But it's really when we get to stage 5 where a lot of the real work begins, because now that we've entered go-to-market continued, this thing's up in space, but we need to start building an ecosystem of content and best practices and prescriptive playbooks for how to use this stuff, all to ensure that this capability is actually adopted and successfully used once it's been launched into the world. Up next, I think that this is a really important yet overlooked piece of our go-to-market process that I wanted to take a little bit of time today to call out. And it's the way that we at G2 produce and then refine our go-to-market messaging. So it all starts with a message house, so including the very real one that you see here up on the screen. And we at G2 build one of these for every single product, feature, integration, M&A, big and small, no matter what it is. There's always this sort of one doc Bible, if you will, that's going to help us define a number of things. For starters, what the heck is it? What is this capability? Who is it for? Where is it going to sit within our product hierarchy? How are we going to launch it tactically? And what's the value? And what we do in this doc is we also add in any sort of relevant data points, research that we can find on personas, and taglines that can ultimately help with direct response on those resources. This is something that I always want our product marketers getting into the habit of thinking of, which is, well, what is that message within this message house, if you will, that's going to get people to convert on whatever this story is that I'm launching in market. And so that message house is then actually taken and delivered to our creative and our copywriting team. And so what they do is they go through their own process of picking out the key points for our landing pages and our emails, if you will, to ensure that they actually convert. This is what they think about all the live long day. And so in order for messaging, your go-to-market messaging, to truly be successful, I would argue that you actually can't have one without the other. It's got to start with us as product marketers, and that the foundation needs to be built, the blueprint for whatever this thing is going to be within your message house, which is then handed over to copy so they can focus all of their energy on turning it into resources and messaging that is absolutely primed to convert. And so I always, when I get to this section, I like to give a shout out to our own head of copy at G2. His name is Eddie, and without his skills and brilliance and his collaboration, our campaigns just would not be as successful as they've been. And then finally, tactical launch management. This is also something that I think gets overlooked as well because we're all just moving so fast. But for some perspective, at G2, we use Asana, and it has been in many ways product marketing's secret weapon for launching in such rapid and quick succession as we have. It's truly in its own way built perfectly for go-to-market planning. You can tag folks cross-functionally, and it provides total visibility on what's happening with any specific go-to-market project. And it's just great. I mean, we manage every single step of that 5-step process that you just saw all through Asana, and I couldn't recommend it more. And finally, let's talk about end-to-end business outcome tracking, because one of the most important pieces of our success in product marketing is actually making sure that we can report on it and measure it. And so let's consider living at the intersection and what that means in terms of supporting product, marketing, and sales. It's really hard to live at the intersection unless you're reporting success metrics from it. And this has, I think, often been a very gray area. And depending on the company you go to and the needs and the problems they're facing, the reports and the success metrics from product marketing can honestly be totally different. But at G2, we've tried to take a really comprehensive approach to the way that we measure our impact. And so we follow all of our programs religiously from end to end. And so this is going to include at the very top, top of funnel submissions and leads. And it spans into every opportunity across every stage of the life cycle that's been influenced by a program, by one of our touch points that we've launched. We then follow that again all the way through closed won, quite literally money in the bank from all of those deals that we've influenced and touched, and then all the way through to product adoption, which is, I think, something that a lot of companies do sometimes. They tend to stop at closed won. And as a result, we don't necessarily check to make sure these products are being utilized or how satisfied customers are. And so we track that all the way through to product adoption to make sure that those products are being used, they're being operationalized, and driving results for our customers. And then finally, we follow that one step further to customer renewals to ensure that those opportunities, which then turned into closed won, which then turned into products that have been adopted, are contributing to the long-term and recurring success of G2, the lifetime value of our customers, if you will. And you know what's really nice about this approach is that when it's done right, all of your stakeholders that you're working with as a product marketer come away really happy. Let's see, marketing is being supported in terms of reaching their lead goals. They're going to be really pumped about that. Sales is being fed better quality opportunities that are more likely to close. And so they're they're hitting their quotas and they're feeling really good about things too. This leads to more closed won and growth and money in the bank for the org. And so your executive team and board is going to be really happy about that. And then product is going to be really happy because the things that they're building are being adopted. And of course, CS and your relationship managers, your RM team, are going to be happy because all of that is resulting in like a bunch of happy customers who are using products successfully and who are renewing at higher clips. And so, in my book, if product marketing we're not necessarily crushing it in our role unless we're helping all of our stakeholders crush theirs. And so that's really, for me, what life at the intersection truly means. All right. And so let's go through some final thoughts and then open it up to some questions. I would love to hear from you all, and I want to leave us a little bit of time to answer those live. And so let's talk about what we've learned along the way. For starters, when looking to build your own world-class go-to-market team, please, from the bottom of my heart, hire for balance. I know that everyone wants the best candidates, and I totally get it. And talent and brilliance, those are all really important things and lend themselves well to everything that we're doing. But also take it one step deeper and really look to hire the right candidates based on what you do really well and what your team already does really well. And by finding candidates with the skills and the talents to sort of fill in those gaps that you might have on your team, it's going to result in a really versatile and balanced team that helps each other grow and while not having duplicative roles and sort of skills within your team. Number two, I'll say it a million times, process is good. It's not going to slow anybody down. And I know it's startups, that's incredibly important. We all want to move fast, but it's going to ultimately help you launch faster and more effectively. And it's also going to drive some good cross-functional accountability because now every team at the intersection, all 3 points of that pyramid, product, marketing, and sales, are going to have skin in the game in order to ensure a successful go-to-market event. And then finally, number three, you're not truly living at the intersection unless you're reporting from it. And so please be sure that all 3 points of those pyramid are hitting their goals, so that you as a product marketer can feel really good about the impact that you're driving across your organization. All right, and that's what I've got as far as how we've built our go-to-market team at G2 and sort of the pieces and components that went into that. And so in the last about 5 minutes that we have left in this session, I wanted to take a look. I see some comments popping in here to see if there are some questions I can answer. So let's see, we can start at the top here. All right, so from Lawrence, when it comes to balancing your product marketing team, what kind of programs would you suggest for upskilling current team members if a new hire isn't a plausible option? Yeah, that's a great question. And my team today is me and 3 other product marketers. But when I started, it was just me and a product marketing specialist. And so we kind of had to start from scratch and had to cover a lot of ground. What I started to do in building out that blueprint was not only was I finding programs that we were launching at G2 that would fit into the toolkit or skill set of one of those personas that I just mentioned, but I found things outside of G2 to help send this person to. And so, for instance, the product marketing specialist that I joined at the time, who was at G2, was an evangelist through and through. She'd been at G2 for about 5 years. She knew the product and the personas better than anyone I knew there. She started in CS, moved into product marketing, and was really ingrained in sort of the core functionality of what G2 offered. Where we wanted to build her skills were within creative writing and storytelling. And so one of the things that we actually looked into were, for starters, what campaigns and GTM events would require a lot of in-person training, if you will, so that we could get her in front of more people so that she could start to exercise that muscle a little bit more. And then in addition to that, finding those sort of GTM campaigns that aligned really well to the skills we wanted to build out. We also looked at things outside of G2, like improv classes and creative writing classes that G2 was kind enough to sort of cover as part of employee development to try to build her skills within those areas too. And as a result, she's come such a long way as not just an evangelist, which she still is, but as a storyteller and as a presenter too. It's been amazing to watch. Let's see, we've got a question from Tanya. While balancing is important, what are the core skills you would say are a must for a product marketing team? Yeah, that's a good question. I think there are 5 core skills, and some of them are in here, but like at a baseline, in order to be a successful product marketer, For starters, you need to be a strong writer. So much of your job is going to be uncovering whatever that hook or that story is within the value story that you're trying to build. Two, you need to be a strong storyteller and an in-person trainer regardless. Even if it's a muscle that we're not always comfortable flexing, I think a lot of the success of our GTM activities are going to live and die with our ability to inspire confidence within the sales team. Three, I think you need, even if you're new and you don't necessarily know the product yet, you need a natural curiosity or inkling for how platforms work and how they integrate with each other. You have to be naturally interested in how technology works, along with how product roadmaps work as well. So you could really have a seat at the table when you're working with product managers. I think the last two are, for starters, you need to, at a baseline, understand how marketing programs work, even if you don't know the automation tools very well. Understanding titles, understanding segments, so that even off the top of your head, you can rip off sort of segments and approaches for campaigns. And I think the last one is understanding how a sales cycle works at a company. And again, these are things that are learned, but natural curiosity within product marketing and sales, along with really strong skills as far as being a writer and a core presenter, are going to bode well for anyone. And I think a lot of that is just gleaned from being a naturally curious person. The best product marketers I've seen don't necessarily come from product marketing. They come from sales or from CS. They spent time on the front lines. I came from CS myself, and every member of my product marketing team has come from either a customer success or from a sales role and transitioned in. And so having that exposure on the front lines as well bodes really well for product marketers. It's actually sort of an unwritten rule when I'm looking to build teams. I always look for people from non-traditional backgrounds who haven't spent their whole career in product marketing.
Thank you for everyone for tuning in, and thank you for such good questions. And Yoni, do you have any sort of final remarks?
No, it's been such a pleasure. For all of you who were able to join me today, thank you so much. And I try to be pretty active on LinkedIn and within the PMA community. And I'm always around on a Friday afternoon to talk go-to-market blueprints and strategies and sort of connect with other like-minded product marketers. So please find me. Let's grab 30 minutes to catch up. And I would love to hear your questions and see how I can help and see how you can help me too.
Cheers, Yoni. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Welcome to Product Marketing Alliance. We're home to everything a product marketer needs to learn, share, and succeed in their role. The definitive product marketing course, Product Marketing Core, is the perfect platform for experienced product marketers to broaden their existing knowledge, as well as educate newcomers beginning with their product marketing journey. A comprehensive course spanning 11 modules. Each section takes an in-depth look into the core elements of the industry. Our community. We're home to more than 10,000 product marketers across the world. And every single day, tons of product marketing specific conversations go down. In the words of one of our members, Madeline Turner, the community hasn't just been an absolute wealth of knowledge and answers, it's the place for constant inspiration. With a PMA membership plan, everything a product marketeer could possibly need is all in there, all in one place. Whether you want to grab a template to start using right away, learn about how to become more strategic from product marketeers who've mastered it, sit back and watch hundreds of hours of presentations from some of the world's most trusted brands, our packages have got it all and more. We really are, dare we say it, the one-stop shop.
Hello and welcome to my talk. I'm Kevin Zentmeyer and I'm here to talk about why you should own pricing even if you know nothing about pricing. I'm the Director of Product Marketing at Ibotta, and you can find some more things from me at kevinzentmeyer.com. So a little bit about me. I lead product marketing at Ibotta. I've been in product marketing at 5 different companies at this point, and with varying degrees of pricing ownership. It's always different at every company. I have a BA in economics and an MBA in marketing and analytics, but what I'll show you in a little bit will show you that those things don't really matter very much. You don't actually need them to be able to do this. And I also did finance before sort of seeing the light of product marketing and realizing that that was going to be a lot more fun in my career than crunching numbers and valuing assets. So never looking back there. So goals for this talk are to demystify pricing because I think there's a lot that people sort of get overwhelmed with and think is a bit too technical for them, and I'll show you that it's not. I'm going to show you where the banana peels are. So for any Mario Kart fans, there's one for you. And I want to give you a playbook so that you can sort of take this on and have a method, at least one of them, to sort of pursue pricing and owning that space within your company. So more specifically, the agenda is going through stakeholder alignment, because that is the most important thing. That's where you should start. Talk about how to make pricing changes, customer insight channels so that you know what you're doing, accelerate revenue using pricing, when to make pricing changes, making the right change, and discounting. So stakeholder alignment, that's the hard part. We're going to sort of eat the frog and start with the hardest part here, and then take it from there. The reason why it's so important and why you have to start here is without alignment, you will make no progress in making pricing changes. They will get rejected by sales. They'll continue selling or using their old sheet and get approval for it. Finance will throw up on whatever you've come up with. You won't get anything done if you don't start here. So who owns pricing? It's a multiple choice question. Is it finance, sales, product, marketing, the executive team? All the above. All the above, so really none of the above. Or seriously, nobody does. It just kind of happened and no one's really aware of what's going on. I've seen a mixture of all of these. So it, again, varies from company to company. Frequently what I see is that it's sort of a shared responsibility, so no one really does anything about it. And so opportunities that exist in pricing go sort of unexploited. And it's a lever that's left untouched, which is a mistake, because it's extremely important for revenue growth, which as product marketers at tech companies, that's obviously extremely important. So that's not obviously what you want to do. So what matters to do pricing right? A lot of things. So first, again, alignment, customer insights, so that you're making these changes based on something. There's sort of a bag of tricks in pricing. There's different ways to do it. They're much less important than knowing why you're doing things. And sort of once you have the customer insights and have a framework of understanding of what you're trying to achieve, the bag of tricks kind of is an easy afterthought. Financial modeling, at the very least, you need to understand the impact that making various changes will have on the finances of your company. Otherwise, you don't really know how to sort of value or gauge the upside and the downsides. And then lastly, business analysis. There's always, in most companies, you're using Salesforce and all of your customer data is within that platform. And so being able to access that and analyze it is very important. But also business intelligence is just as important, because you need to understand customer metrics. So if you're pricing based on usage, you need to know where the usage of those customers is versus where the actual caps are, those types of things. So BI or BA, depending on how you frame it in your company, is very important as well. But here's the secret. If you focus on the leadership needs, you can basically outsource the rest. So you don't actually need to have all of these things yourself, which is great because very few people do. It's very hard to have all those things in one person, but you don't need to, again, because you're going to do it via a team or a committee, and that's what's going to enable you to get stuff done. Just like in the rest of your working life as a product marketer, you lean on others throughout the organization. In general, we don't own things, we influence things. That's also true in pricing, and that's how you should think about it. So who should own pricing? Obviously, I have an opinion here, but finance, while this is actually where it sits in many companies, I think it's actually the worst fit. So finance people have all the technical skills. However, they don't interact with the customers. And they don't actually interact with the people who are interacting with the customers that much. And so they tend to operate in a vacuum and sort of see the gives and takes on the P&L and how it affects the finances, but they don't really think about it in terms of how it affects the customers. And if you don't think about it in a customer first way, you're going to end up making a whole lot of mistakes that look great in an Excel document, but don't actually deliver the results that you want to see. Sales frequently also owns pricing. They're great from an insights perspective in that they have the most direct customer access of any of the departments, but they also have a lot of vested interest in this because that pricing determines their ability to close deals and in how they see it. And so just because they're so directly tied to the commission structure, you have a little bit of a fox in the henhouse effect if you're letting sales just run pricing in a vacuum, as they tend to when they control it. Product. So from a customer insights perspective, they're great. They're also great at getting alignment, which is extremely important to making any kind of pricing change effective and making sure that all the voices are sort of in the room and heard. However, it doesn't really align with their primary objective. So as a product manager, your key goal is really building the right product. And getting that right is so hard just by itself that adding pricing and revenue growth on top of that is a lot to ask. And so lastly, marketing. Product marketers are customer focused, so that's a great start. PMMs are great at getting alignment. We do that all day, every day. And the marketing goal is always revenue growth. So alignment for not only ability to get alignment across the org, but also the personal alignment of the goals of the marketer are there. And so to me, product marketing, and granted I'm biased, but product marketing is the best fit for where pricing should be. So that doesn't mean that product marketing should operate in a vacuum and just do it by themselves. That the best way, in my view, is to start a pricing committee. So what is a pricing committee? Well, a pricing committee gives you a couple things. It's a vehicle to both drive alignment and to give you outsourcing. Because again, we go back to that list before. That's too many things to ask of one person. It's unrealistic. And so this really gives you your vehicle to bring in those additional skills that you may lack or not be quite as strong in, to be able to fill that out. And you do it by assembling this dream team, so to speak. So again, the 5 sort of things that you need alignment, which as a product marketer, you should be quite good at. For customer insights, you're a good start, but you should also add in sales. So sales should be a part of this pricing committee. The pricing bag of tricks, to be honest, just outsource that to the internet, right? Like all of the models exist out there, and you can read up on them when you figure out what it is that you want to accomplish in a given situation. Similar to how software engineers typically are sort of doing research on what are the ways for them to accomplish their technical goal, and we'll sort of look on GitHub or those types of things. You could do the same thing as a pricing leader, and you don't need to have the entire bag of tricks in your head. Don't worry about that. And then for financial modeling, finance should already be a part of this pricing committee because their alignment is going to be extremely important. And to be honest, no matter how good at finance you are as a product marketer, you're not going to be as good at it as a financial analyst who does it all day, every day. And so adding them to the team is going to be helpful. And then business analysis, so add analytics, right? Add someone from the analytics team to help you there, to help dig through Salesforce and BI. Even though you may and probably should have a Salesforce license, that doesn't mean that you're going to be as quick to pull data and be able to analyze it as a BA is going to be. So you need to add them to the team. Again, not just to add those skills, but also for alignment so that their boss gets on board with the changes that you're looking to make because they know that analytics has had a hand in it and has been part of the decision-making process. And that's going to help you as you bring things to the executive level. So what are the components of a pricing committee? Well, there's the team. So you've got to define that membership, who's in the team. A RASKI is quite useful. I normally hate RACIs or RASKIs, but to be honest, in a pricing committee, they're actually very helpful. It's the only time that I've ever really used one to any effect, as opposed to more so being an annoyance. So I recommend using one of those in this situation. You need a time commitment from everyone on the team. So everyone needs to dedicate a certain slice of their time to be able to make this effective, because if finance is doing a great job of analyzing the opportunities that come up through the pricing committee, but analytics isn't pulling the appropriate data that you need, you're going to stumble and you're not going to be able to make progress. So all different parts of the committee who are a part of it need to commit a certain amount of time. Otherwise, you won't make progress. Team meeting cadence is very important. You need to establish that up front. It'll be a forcing function for people to be getting their work done week to week. And we'll sort of set a schedule for you to set milestones and goals along the way to, again, make that progress. You need a roadmap. So just like you have a product roadmap, you need a pricing roadmap. And this pricing roadmap really serves to accomplish the same kinds of goals that you have with a product roadmap, and that you're sort of mapping out your priorities, but then also what are the sort of dependencies and other teams that are needed, and when are the appropriate times to make things happen. And that roadmap will really assist you in sort of laying that out and communicating that to your cross-functional stakeholders, exactly like our product roadmap. So you should be very familiar with that concept, so it should be pretty easy for you guys. You also need principles. What do I mean by that? I mean that really you need to define what is it that is the goal of the pricing committee, and sort of what are you optimizing for? If you're familiar with OKRs are a good kind of framework or a way to think about this. So within the principles, you need to decide on what your metrics are. Like what goal do you seek? Let's say you want to optimize revenue growth, but is it revenue growth within the next 6-month time period? Is it long-term revenue growth and you're looking at 2 to 3 year time windows? Are you looking at cash in the door because your burn rate is sort of eating up your cash, and you really need to shift the way that you collect and sort of pulling people on upfront payments is more important. So you really need to decide what are the goals that you're trying to seek. And then also, similar to an OKR structure with health metrics, you have to decide, what do I want to do no harm to, or what am I also comfortable doing a little bit of harm to at the expense? What am I comfortable with doing a little bit of damage to, as long as I'm optimizing for X? So for example, any change that you make is going to take time and cost the sales team some downtime in training. So are you looking to do no harm to that sales team, or are you looking to minimize harm in terms of productivity there? So you've got to kind of lay out what it is that you're sort of seeking, and what are you willing to hurt, because there will always be trade-offs as you go through this process. You also need an executive mandate. Otherwise, people are going to say, like, what the heck is this pricing committee? What do you mean you decided that you were doing this thing? Who gave you the right to do that? Get out of here. So to get that executive mandate, you need to present the committee to the executive team. And what do they want to know? They want to know that there's going to be a good ROI on the time of the team, those slices of time that the constituents of the committee have committed. So finance, you've got a business analyst and a financial analyst who are committing 1/3 of their time to this project. You need to lay that out and show that you're going to get a good return in terms of revenue back on the time that they're going to have to invest in OpEx. So also from a product service scope, so like let's say you're a software as a service company. If you're also selling professional services, are services part of the scope, or are you really just looking at software? You have to decide what's in and what's out. Discounting scope. Are you setting just list price, or are you also setting discounting rules? I would suggest that you do both, because otherwise, if you don't really control discounting within the committee, you don't really control price, because the real price is the effective price, or the net price post discount. Once the sales team gets their hands on it and they actually say, well, I'm selling it for this, that's the price that matters. And so if you just control list price, but you don't do anything in terms of discounting, then the salesperson really wholly owns sales, or excuse me, owns pricing. And they're going to be doing it and optimizing it around their individual book of business. And as an individual sales rep, without the kind of resources that you're bringing to bear with finance and business analytics and customer insights and so forth. So I would suggest that you don't want that. So you want agreement on principles from that exec committee, very important. Because once they've agreed on these are the principles that we're comfortable with you running by, then when you bring the recommendations to them of we want to change this, we want to do that, because it's already within the framework of the principles, you should have pre-agreement for basically everything that you're going to recommend. And so it gets much easier at that point. And you're also going to want an executive check-in cadence. Is it quarterly, every 6 weeks? You just need to decide what that looks like, both as a forcing function for the team, but also so that they know that you're making progress on it and the executive mandate they give you isn't given in vain. They know that things are happening. So how do you actually make pricing changes? Super important. Here's a quote from Profitwell, a company that's in the space that I really liked. So pricing is a process that utilizes data to eliminate as much doubt as possible for key stakeholders to make a profit maximizing decision. There is no silver bullet, but with data, you'll have a nice barrel full of lead. Perfect. Pricing is a process. It is an ongoing thing. Pricing never gets perfected. It is always evolving. As your business evolves, as your product evolves, as your customer base evolves, pricing will always be changing, which is why you're going to need to have dedicated personnel that are focusing on it to always be getting it right. What is that process? Well, so this is the process that I favor. So it's very similar to product, again, probably because I'm a product marketer, but start with the discovery process, then analyze what you've discovered, make a recommendation to the executive committee, you'll get a decision, and then you start implementing it. Pretty simple. So discovery work, how do you do discovery on pricing? Well, a good place to start is just to ask for problems. Seriously walk around the company, talk to various departments and ask for them, what problems does pricing cause? What's wrong with pricing? And you'll get a lot of responses. Generally, people hate pricing. So you'll get a lot of feedback. So that's a great place to start. One thing you need to keep in mind is you need to listen for bias, though, because typically, not everybody, but typically you'll hear from sales, the price is too high, it's getting in the way of me being able to do this deal, blah, blah, blah. Or from customer support, this thing is too complicated, I always get these questions about it, blah, blah, blah. Your bias is going to change based on the department, so you just need to factor that into the feedback that you receive from them. You also should be finding opportunities yourself, so self-source. So a great way to sort of dig deeper once you've sort of sourced what sounds like a problem is to do the 5 whys, which is, if you haven't heard of it before, it's essentially the concept that if I ask why 5 times to progressively dig deeper into the problem, eventually I'll get to the actual root problem and figure out the thing that I should really fix so the problem doesn't come back. That's often the case in pricing, because it may not be, let's say, oh, the cap is actually too high. Maybe that's actually the wrong metric, or maybe we're measuring the metric wrong. It could be a litany of different things. You really need to dig into it to get to the root of the problem there. You should also be looking at competitors. Competitors are a great place to benchmark and find ideas of how you should be pricing, whether it's a different model or something that your customer or prospects prefer more. That's a good place to look. Also, sort of what if analysis. What if we did freemium? What if we did something completely different than we do now? What if we increased our price by 10x? Just start there and then see where you end up. And then you need to prioritize all those different sets to dig deeper into analysis, because discovery is relatively easy. It's quick. Analysis is tough. So once you've decided which areas to focus on, this analysis part takes way more time. So you want to prioritize before you get there. Otherwise, you'll just spend way too much in analysis and won't ever get to the recommendation, decision, and implementation where the actual value is created for the company. So you really got to winnow that list down before you get to analysis. So once you've figured out what problems are, now it's actually a good time to research that bag of tricks. Go consult the internet. Go consult somebody else who does pricing, and figure out what are some solutions that could help you with the problems that you've uncovered and sized and have decided are worth pursuing. You'll want to test multiple options. What does that mean? Doesn't mean necessarily you want to test them in the marketplace, but more so that you want to scenario plan different ones. So feed them to the business analytics or finance person who's helping you, and feed them to sales, and then just see what they come back with. What impacts would this have on customers? How do you think they would feel about it? What would this do to the P&L if we did this and this? And then you'll figure out whether this is a good idea fairly quickly. You want feedback from sales, and then you're going to do a customer impact analysis. What does that mean? It's more than just saying we're going to make $10 million extra if we make this change. It's going to impact 250 customers, and they're in this tier of our customer base. And that tier of our customer base has this average NPS score. And we feel good about putting that additional stress on them of raising their price, or we don't. Really think about it from a micro point of view, a microeconomic point of view. Put yourself in their shoes, which as a product marketer, you're fully capable of doing, right? So put yourself in their shoes and figure out, is this going to be worth it to them? And how are they going to perceive this impact? And is sort of the juice going to be worth the squeeze in this scenario? Next, you're going to want to make that recommendation. That recommendation is going to go to the executive team, because once you've done the analysis, you've already gotten the feedback from everyone sort of at your level to figure out whether this is actually a good idea. You know it's a good idea once you've gone to recommendation. So once you take it to the exec committee, you're going to want to de-jargon it. It's totally fine if you want to blow people away with your fancy terminology that you found on the internet for pricing methodologies. That's totally fine. I've done it. But you want to de-jargon it just to make sure they fully understand it, because otherwise questions will come up later. And you don't want to catch questions after the fact. You want to kind of nip those in the bud at that point. You're going to balance the stakeholder impacts, and you're going to show how you did that, to say, look, this is going to have an impact on we're going to have to take the sales team off the floor, train them for 2 hours so they understand this thing. We're going to have to train the customer support team so that they understand how to deal with the questions. We built an FAQ for them. You're going to want to show that you've done your homework of balancing the stakeholder impacts, and that this is a reasonable approach given all the sort of variables in play. And then also you're going to declare what the timing looks like. So you're going to say, I want to roll this out at the beginning of Q1. We're going to do it on this date. The pricing will go into effect for customers who we haven't started talking about pricing with, so deals that are in the discovery phase here. And then for customers who've already had a price quoted, that quote is still good for another month. So you want to lay out what that timing looks like and nail that down. And then once the executive team sort of ratifies that and decides that, gives you that mandate and says, yes, this is what we're doing, then you're able to bring that to the sales team and other departments that are impacted and tell them that that's the result. And then you have that mandate to be able to say, it is happening here. I understand if that causes some stress in your department, but this is when it's happening because this is when the CFO wanted it, right? So that gives you a lot more sort of air cover and gives you that point in time to say, it's happening at this point, which is very helpful. Otherwise, these things are just kind of, will get pushed out and slid. So then the implementation, so there's a lot of different factors. It depends on your company, but again, you're going to need to document the heck out of this thing. When you make a change, you're going to need FAQs for various departments. You're going to need to document your rationale, which your rationale should always go into your training, because salespeople want to understand why you made this change, both because they need to get comfortable with it and accept it because this affects them in a pretty major way, but also because they're going to have to then explain this to customers. So you're going to have to really drill it into them in the way that they're going to, it's going to sort of hit home, and they're going to be able to explain it in their own words after the fact, after they're out of the training. So very, very important that you get that training right and that the rationale is really, really strong, strongly communicated. Reporting, commissions, your ERP system or your subscription manager, like Zuora, is going to need to be updated. And then you're going to have both your internal comms to tell people this is coming and your customer comms to sort of do the same thing. All needs to be sort of addressed and timelined out. And this is where some project management help, if you can get it, is always helpful. So the executive deck, real quick, it's basically a cycle. So you show your results from the prior changes you made. You lay out your pricing roadmap and say, this is what's coming up. And then you say, these are the opportunities that were at the top of my roadmap. And so therefore we addressed them and came up with these solutions. Here are my recommendations to fix those things. There are customer insights baked into that to be able to say, I feel confident, I've de-risked this change and I know that this is going to work because we talked to these customers. We did this survey. You have all of this customer insight to be able to give you confidence in this change, which will then give confidence to the executive team and giving you that mandate to make all those changes. And then you're going to lay out that implementation timeline so that, the head of sales, the head of customer support, et cetera, knows how this is going to impact their team and is sort of gets comfortable with it at the executive level. How to use pricing as a strategic revenue accelerator. So real quick, very basic formulas. Anyone can do this math, but volume times price equals revenue, right? How many things do you sell? That's how much money you make. That's the easy one. The same is true for growth, right? But people often forget about it. People forget about pricing growth. They mainly focus on volume growth, which is a mistake because typically if you're in a high growth tech company, revenue growth matters kind of more than anything. And you're sort of leaving one lever maybe on the table or maybe just under-examined. And then the slightly more complex one is price growth or your net revenue retention ratio. That makes or breaks your LTV to CAC. What is LTV to CAC? It is your lifetime value, how much they pay you over the lifetime of being a customer, divided by your customer acquisition cost. Basically, any venture capital firm or institutional investor will value your company based on this formula of LTV to CAC. And the major thing that will determine it is when I land a customer, am I able to charge them more money next year than the year that they joined? Am I able to find ways to engage them and get them to spend more money with me and have pricing levers built into the product to be able to capture that increased engagement via pricing? That's super important, and that's basically what will drive that ratio more than anything other than the quality of your product, which is much harder, obviously. So here's a pricing impact example that I love. So here's Dropbox. So Dropbox versus Google. You could say Microsoft, you can pick another product, but I'm doing Dropbox versus Google. So Dropbox, my apologies if anyone on this presentation works for Dropbox or Google, but Dropbox by any right should be just destroyed by Google. Google has a much better product. They have so many advantages, but they don't. And I would say that it really comes down to their pricing strategy. And I'll show you what I mean. So first, they have a clear freemium model, which means it's free until you hit certain tiers of usage, and then they start charging you. They have really low data caps, which granted reduces the quality of the product because they're saying, hey, you only get 2 gigabytes of data free. Past that, you got to pay us every month. So that does lessen the value of the product. However, it does increase the likelihood of a user to use the referral program to get more data added to their caps. Instead of 2 gigabytes, they get 4, 6, 8, 10, et cetera, to really let them keep using the product in the engaged way that they've been doing. So you compare that with Google. Google has a freemium model as well, but they have confusing metrics. It's if you dig into it, it's not easy to see at the face value how it actually works as a Google consumer. And even as someone who works in pricing, it took me several pages to finally break down exactly how it works because they don't really make it easy to follow. They have higher data caps, which increases the value of the product because they're saying, I'm not going to give you 2 gigabytes of data. I'm giving you a lot more than that. And they have superior product features. They suited it with Google Docs, just like Microsoft Suite includes in the Office suite, Word and Excel, et cetera, with their cloud storage product. It's a superior brand. Google is one of the most valuable brands in the world, and they have 2 billion MAUs. If you have 2 billion users, you should be able to cross over everyone into your free product, right? But they don't. The net result is several years into this battle between these two companies, these were their results from the last quarterly report. So 2.1% quarter over quarter user growth and 1.5% quarter over quarter revenue growth per user, which is back to what I said before in terms of it being super, super important to squeeze more money out of the customers that who you already have. So that the combination of those two numbers means an annualized revenue growth of 15.2% per year, which is pretty good. That's great. Ends up with them getting a 5.6 multiple of their sales. That's their valuation of the company, and they have a $9.3 billion market cap. A big company. Basically, they're doing just fine. And it really comes down to, in my opinion, their pricing strategy, because they don't have a ton of other stuff going for them compared to the massive behemoth that is Google. So that is kind of an example of why it's so important to get this right, because it can really be a huge strategic advantage to you. So real quick, we're going to talk through the different ways that people tend to approach it. So it's usually one of these three. Competitor-based pricing, where I'm really looking at my competitor. I'm Dropbox. I'm looking at Google, and I'm saying, this is what you charge for 100 gigabytes of storage. I'm going to charge a little more, a little less, the same, but I'm basing it on what you're charging. Cost plus pricing is, I'm again Dropbox. It costs me $1 to host 100 gigabytes of storage, so I'm going to charge $2 because I want to charge a 100% markup on my price. That's cost plus. Value-based pricing is really the value to a consumer of 100 gigabytes of storage when I get to dig into their use cases and I understand how they use it is really $2 a month, so that's what I charge them. So those are the different models, but they're really incomplete. So when you read about these models, whether it's in business school or you read about it on the internet, wherever you go, or a presentation like mine, the problem is that they're always looked at generally in isolation and in comparison to each other when really they're complementary. So really the way that you should look at it, in my opinion, is a multi-angle analysis. So you should have competitive analysis. You should look at how you stack up versus your competitors in terms of your pricing. You look at your internal knowledge. There's a lot of knowledge inside your company. There's a lot of knowledge inside of your data, your NPS surveys, et cetera. And then you should do some third-party studies. So I just listed three of the big companies that do it: Profitwell, CXL, and MMR, but there are a lot of other ones. Recommend doing something like that, because then you really have an internal view, an external market view within your market, and then you also have a third leg of the stool that makes this much more effective and gives you sort of some of the specificity around questions that you want answered that you can get done in a study that you can't get done if you can't actually ask prospects and customers questions that like a salesperson that works for your company is never going to let you do, right? Or they're never going to give you an honest answer to. Willingness to pay is not something that you should ever really talk about with your actual customers. So these are the only pricing questions that really matter. They're kind of hard to answer, but they're the only ones that really matter. So what are my competitors' prices? You sometimes have to do a little digging if they're not public, but you need to get your hands on your competitors' pricing. So that's competitor-based pricing. That was one of the models that we saw earlier. And then, is my product better or worse than yours? That's, again, competitor-based, because you're saying, they're here. Do I want to be here, or do I want to be a little higher? How much is that difference worth, right? Which one is another thing competitor-based pricing doesn't really ever get into, which is the value-based component. So do I want to be twice as expensive, half it? Once I've decided that my product is better than yours, do I want to be 10% higher or 20% higher? You have to figure out a way to score that and to size it. And value-based pricing method is very effective at doing that. Can I make money at this price? Because if you can't, you shouldn't be in that business at all. And at what volume? So, because you can also say, well, at a certain scale, I will then finally make money. And that's fine. So cost plus is a good method to figure out what's my floor or what's my tolerance in a market. And especially for new products is incredibly helpful, because again, it can be the judge of whether you want to even get into that space. Because again, if I'm looking at businesses to get into, document storage is probably not one of them, because if you did that cost plus analysis with the scale of the people who are operating it, you're probably not going to make money. So good to use that. Then the fifth question is this simpler or more complicated than my current pricing? So this is one that is as far as I can tell, is mine. So complexity has costs to it. They're soft costs, but they're very real. And so you should take a hard look at, am I making things more complicated or simpler? Because not only is there cost in terms of the implementation of that, but also adding complexity is just going to make your next change that much harder. So if you're the one running pricing, be a little selfish. Don't make your job that much harder in the future by making it more complicated. Keep simplicity will not only save on cost, but it'll also save you headaches. And if you're a salesperson, make your job that much easier. So the net result looks something like this as a general visual. So there's your better competitor's price. So who's doing it better than you in your market? Hopefully no one, but let's say there is. And then who's doing it worse than you? And then you're sort of bracketing and saying like, well, I know that I should be more expensive than these guys, but less expensive than these guys. You sort of bracket yourself in. And then there's the value-based advantage of like, well, how much more is my product worth than the one who's not quite as good as I am? And then how much of a price advantage would I need for somebody to switch to me? Because they have a better product, but at some point I'm willing to deal with the lack of features that your product has to be able to save some money, right? And that could also be based on personas and budget basing. But let's say generally that's really how you want to do it is really space it between your competitors and figure out what should that premium and what should that discount be. So when to make pricing changes. All right, so external. What I really mean by external is not by the pricing committee, right? If it's external to the pricing committee. So market driven would be like your competitor comes out with a new feature and doesn't raise their price. They're just better now. Happens all the time, right? As a SaaS company, we roll out features nonstop. Or competitors change their price, particularly if one of your higher end competitors reduces their price and gets more competitive with you on the low end. That's tough. Or a product driven change, which again, just external to the pricing committee, but not to the company, which is we're coming out with a new product. We got to figure out a way to price this thing. Otherwise we're not going to make any money. Or new features that are being tacked on to your existing product, because you may or may not want to change your pricing scheme to sort of capture some of the surplus value that new feature creates for customer base. And then the internal force is really like, whenever you decide that this is a good idea, there's a good opportunity to decide to chase for incremental revenue. Whatever the pricing committee thinks, you should just do it, right? You should just pursue that. So for market driven, typically the way this comes at you is a competitor who is sort of below you in the value chain comes after you with more premium features. And so that sort of value surplus that you had versus your competitor is reduced because now you no longer have quite as much of a feature advantage compared to them. And then the other way it tends to come at you with pricing is really a higher end competitor reducing their price and coming down market into your space and trying to squeeze you out. And so that's where they really get into a price war, and that reduces your price advantage that you had against that competitor so that you could say, yeah, I don't have that artificial intelligence feature, but I cost half as much. It really undermines your argument with prospects, and that's tough. So the other angle is product driven. So new features, really these are like Lego blocks. These are tools that you have to work with. Most SaaS companies have tiers, so it's not really a binary thing. You either buy me or you don't buy me. It's more so a good, better, best, which I definitely recommend. And part of the advantage of that is when you keep rolling out these new features, you can use them as what they call feature teeth, which is really like the reason why you'd want to trade up. I really want that. That artificial intelligence feature. So okay, I have to upgrade to the premium package. Those feature teeth are super helpful, and really it's a way for you to realize revenue on your existing customer base without having to, without raising price effectively, right? Because if you put that new feature into your higher tier, then it's going to drive people to upgrade into that, and that's going to cause incremental revenue and produce an ROI on that software development work that the product team worked so hard on, right? It's a very helpful model and tool. The new product, I show a dartboard here because really new products are very tough. They're very tough because you don't have nearly as much to work with because you haven't sort of had those reps with the market, those repetitions with the market to see whether your price is working or not. It's fresh, it's brand new, it's likely in a new market. So benchmarks can help you de-risk it. So who is already in the space and what do they price at? So again, you can actually go back to that previous model where you're saying, all right, my new product, it's a little worse than these guys, so I'm going to discount compared to them. It's a great way to sort of figure out where you should sit. That said, you also probably should do a third-party study to figure out what those extra features that you are missing or have that the other product doesn't is worth. What's it worth to them, and what's it worth to them in certain customer sets, because that will vary a lot. That feature that's worthless in this sector may be worth a ton in this sector. And so you may actually decide that you need to go with a premium price and just focus on these guys. So it's generally, in my perspective, worth it to do the competitor analysis and do the third-party analysis there. The obvious downside is, if you remember the three-legged stool, you won't be able to do the internal analysis because you've never sold this thing before. So you have no real data on it. So that's what makes this a little tougher. And the timing balance really comes down to the opportunity, right? What are the net benefits of the change? And then what's the cost of complexity and implementation of that change? And you should both look at that in a vacuum. Like, if we change this at any given point in the year, it's going to take this much time and cost this much OpEx. But then also look at it within the calendar and say, we should really not do it within this window, or we really should do it in this window. And you can look at it and say, like, if we pull this forward, do we do it now? It is going to be more costly because it's not great in terms of when we're going to utilize these resources. However, we're able to realize that revenue growth from the change sooner, realize the benefit of it, or get it in before a key sales window, whatever it may be. But you want to look at it in a vacuum and then look at it within the calendar at different points. And that's what will help you come up with what is the right timing balance for this project and when should you actually deploy it. So customer insights channels, there are a lot of them. The way that I look at it is that you should start with anecdotal, just mentions of, this thing annoys me, or what if we had this? So like, start with that anecdotal part and then build on it. So what I mean by that is you're just having conversations, basically. Have conversations with people, sit in on customer quarterly business reviews, and just overhear those things that are going to sort of spark your sort of investigation and deeper investigation of it. And then you're going to go down rabbit holes of unstructured analysis. These are all different pathways you can use. Not all of them will apply to your business, but they're all pretty useful and I've used them at various companies. And then you want to progressively move into structured analysis. So that's where you want to say, all right, I've discovered that this is a thing, but I need to understand it more fully. And I have specific questions about it. And the way that you'll answer those is surveys, third-party studies, and also expert interviews can be very useful, especially in that case where you're introducing a new product and getting into a new space. That's where you really don't have as much to lean on. And so an expert interview in that case is especially helpful. And then once you're at the structured analysis phase, you have a very good hypothesis of what it is that you might want to do. And then you're just doing validation. So guessing and checking, basically, if you remember from elementary school math. So you're going to talk to your customers at something like a customer advisory board, user forums, user testing, by actually putting the product in front of them, and talk to sales and CSMs. You should have already talked to them at the beginning, but that was more so to give you ideas of threads to pull on. Now you need to go back and validate and say, like, you said this is a problem. Do you think this will fix it? And then you should get that feedback and hopefully it's a good fit. So making the right change. So you've decided you're going to make a change. Now you need to figure out the right one. You've got a bunch of different pricing levers to pull. You can do flat fees versus volume-based fees, right? Does it cost more as you use it more, or no? Where do you want to set those caps? Do you bundle features, or are you rolling this thing out a la carte? Do you do tiering or not? Another thing to really think about is transparency. Do I want to put this on the website and just post it, or do I try to sell through channel sales Or am I personalizing pricing and trying to, do basically the used car salesman approach and sell everyone on a different unique price? If you are, then you certainly can't be transparent about your pricing. Keep in mind though, if you're not transparent, your pricing will get out. Non-disclosure agreements will not protect you realistically. It will get to your competitors. It'll get to other prospects. They'll find out what you're actually charging. So don't feel like you can just fully hide behind that. Change frequency. Again, you decide how frequently do I want to change? And that's not just based on the costs of making changes, but also potentially the benefits, and that it can provide a lever or a way to squeeze customers who are in the current pipeline of, hey, the pricing is actually going to change at the end of the quarter. So if you want this pricing, then you need to actually sign the deal now, those types of things. What payment schedule, which can really depend on what your cash situation looks like and what your financials look like as a company, which is why, again, it's important to agree on what those principles are and what are you shooting for, to be able to get a better idea of like, do I want to push for cash now and upfront payment terms, or does it not matter and I can spread those out and it can be more of a customer-friendly pricing structure. Service level agreements, so that's really like uptime, those types of things. How long is your contract? Contract terms. Contract minimums are another one that you may not expect, especially if you're starting on the low end and sort of moving up market. Typically, you want to say, let's say we don't negotiate custom contract terms for all the special things that you want unless you're paying us $2,000, $5,000, $10,000, $100,000 a month, whatever it is that makes sense to your business. That's really where that's a useful structure. Pricing strategies, AKA the bag of tricks. I'm not going to go through these because it would take forever. So what I'm going to do is I'm posting them on my website. So kevinzentmeyer.com/pricing. So you can just go find them there. And again, the point is you shouldn't be going into the bag of tricks until you've decided that, you've set up your pricing committee, you've identified your opportunities, and you're really getting into figuring out what the solutions are that are right for the individual opportunities that you're digging into. So these really don't matter until you're at that stage, but I still want to give them to you guys because it feels wrong not to share that. So that's where I'm posting those. Real quick, before we wrap up, discounting. Discounting is dynamite. I don't mean that in a good way necessarily, but I also don't mean in a bad way. So in real life is a very useful tool, right? If you were a miner, it can be very fast and effective to sort of dig down, right? That's great. However, it is also an explosive. That's kind of scary. It's really dangerous. That's also true in pricing. It destroys value. And that if I give out a 60% discount to this customer, they're going to break their NDA. It's going to get out. Other people are going to find out that you often do discount. And then now you have to deal with discounting for every customer that comes in the door. So it does destroy value in terms of your ability to hold firm on pricing and your ability to sort of maintain the brand equity that your pricing does support if you're a premium product. This is sort of where the metaphor breaks down, because in pricing, but not in dynamite, friction helps. So what I mean by that is that friction sort of applies a bit of a barrier to sales, so that they have to, let's say, ask their sales manager before they're able to apply a discount, or worse for them, they have to ask finance or ask you before they do that. And what that does is it just slows them down enough that they try a little bit harder on negotiation, and ultimately they end up exercising and executing at higher prices. Just as an example, if you say, hey, if you give a discount higher than 10%, you have to go talk to your sales manager. You'll see a ton of deals close at exactly a 10% discount. And if it's above 20%, you have to talk to finance. You'll see a whole bunch more deals close right at 20%. It's not a coincidence. It's because they're going right up until the friction hits, and then that's where they stop. And so that friction, again, is very helpful in trying to maintain those prices a bit higher, and it has a big impact on your profit and loss statement. So also cost plus floors. We talked about cost plus before in terms of a model. It's not useful in isolation as like a way you should price unless you work in the defense industry where they use that a lot. But it is very helpful in setting floors in that you can say, look, below this amount, we don't make money. So we should never price below this. Or below this amount, it's just not worth it for us to do a deal. So those floors are very helpful, and cost plus is really the best way to create those. The best way to create friction is using a deal desk, at least in my opinion. Here's a quick basic way to do it. You've got, in the bottom left quadrant, you've got small deal, small discount. At that point, you don't really care about discounting. It's fine. It's not really going to damage the business. No approvals needed. Sales rep, go do your thing. But if it's a large discount and a large deal, that you could be signing up the company for a very unprofitable deal that weighs it down. And so that's where you need a lot more scrutiny. And so that's where you might want sales management and finance weighing in. And then for those sort of deals in between, sales management can handle within sales' own ranks. So the keys to a deal desk are establishing guardrails up front. So saying, hey, here's how we do analysis and what we might approve and why. And then you've got to create a workflow. So as a sales rep, do I email finance? Do I email a special, I recommend this, but do I email dealdesk@mycompany.com and then it gets routed to the correct person? That's what I would recommend. Or better yet, set up automated workflows within Salesforce where it routes to the correct approvers based on the specifics of the deal. So that no one actually has to do anything. It passively gets managed and actively pushed to wherever it needs to go so that person can handle it. And then you really need a 24-hour SLA, because if this slows down sales, they will complain and they will get their way because you're getting in the way of getting deals done. And so if you've got to keep that SLA short so that as a sales rep, I'm in a deal cycle, I'm producing a price and I'm trying to close this deal, that this isn't the barrier that stops that deal from happening. So to recap, we talked about stakeholder alignment, which again, the most important thing. So start there, focus there. How to make pricing changes, customer insight channels, which is really the basis on which that you're going to make all of your moves in pricing, how it accelerates revenue, when to make pricing changes and where to strike that balance, making the right change, which again, do your research once you've realized what you want to impact, and then discounting. So again, if you want more content, you want that bag of tricks, then you can go find them at my website. Thank you again for joining my talk. Kevin Zentmeyer at Ibotta. Really appreciate it, and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Welcome to Product Marketing Alliance. We're not going to say that we're a one-stop shop for product marketers. That would be a cliche. But what we will say is that we're home to everything a product marketer needs to learn, share, and succeed in their role, whether you're new to the industry or not. Let's start where we began, our community. We're home to more than 10,000 product marketers across the world. And every single day, tons of product marketing specific conversations go down. In the words of one of our members, Madeline Turner, the community hasn't just been an absolute wealth of knowledge and answers, it's the place for constant inspiration. And we agree. Moving on to our industry reports, we publish several a year, and in them, we look at everything from the main responsibilities of a product marketer to average salaries across the world, to how those in the C-suite view and value our role. And then there's our content hub. We and industry specialists are adding new articles every single day so that you can get your fix on everything from positioning all the way to OKRs. Not got time to sit and read? No problem. We've got 2 podcasts on the go where we speak to product marketers all over the world about everything from how they got into the industry and what a day in the life looks like for them. Do you want to sit back and watch something instead? You guessed it, we've got it. With Product Marketing Fix, our very own product marketing streaming service. New video footage is added every week and includes everything from presentations to Q&A. Switching back to the text-based stuff, we've got our AMAs. Every other week, we put product marketers from the likes of Google, IBM and SurveyMonkey and many more under the spotlight to answer all your burning questions. If you want to take your learning to the next level, we've got it covered. With our membership plans, you get to access an ever-growing bank of templates and frameworks, exclusive content from influential industry leaders, hundreds of hours of product marketing presentations, and our mentorship program. And then there's our certification. In Product Marketing Core, we cover 11 essential modules on the A to Z of product marketing. You'll be given exams throughout, hours of bonus footage, live weekly workshops, and an official certification at the end. Keep your eyes peeled too, there's plenty more masterclass courses coming. Still with us? Great. Our partners over at Product Marketing World tour the globe with their annual summits. And outside of that, we have meetup ambassadors who organize local gatherings at least once a quarter. Looking to find your next exciting role with all the newfound knowledge? Then stick with us. Whether you're looking to find or fill a product marketing position, our jobs board is the only recruitment resource around dedicated solely to product marketing. And companies like HubSpot, LinkedIn, and Typeform trust us to find their talent. And last but not least is our contributor programs. If you want to start building your personal profile and putting your words in front of industry enthusiasts, our blog gets hundreds and thousands of hits every month, making it the perfect place to showcase your work. The best bit? That's not everything we have to offer. From our product marketing awards, the ambassador program, to newsletters and the tools directory, we really are, dare we say it, the one-stop shop.
Hello, my name is Maureen Keating, and I'm here today to talk to you about the differences between product management and product marketing. First, a little bit about me. I've been in product management and product marketing roles for companies like Apple, Adobe, Williams-Sonoma, Hewlett-Packard, and Cisco, which puts me in a pretty unique position to be able to talk about the differences between product management and product marketing. With product management, you'll primarily be looking internally and working with the development and engineering teams to focus on developing requirements for each future release. And you'll be prioritizing what makes sense for each of the releases, working with those teams that I mentioned. With product marketing, you'll be focused on your customers and the messaging and the strategies for going to market for the products that are being developed by product management. In both product management and product marketing, you're focused on advocating for the customer. In the case of product management, you'll really be looking at user scenarios and use cases, and developing personas that help, and you'll be responsible for being the chief customer advocate for your product. In the role of product marketing, you're also an advocate for the customer, representing their point of view in the development of personas and use cases. In the case of product management, your personas and use cases are going to be driven by how people are using your product and using that information to help prioritize what should be worked on in the release, and the use cases, which are the ways that people use your product, the reasons they're coming to your product. With product marketing, development of personas is really around a customer journey model, and the use cases are more around purchase behavior and how people are discovering and their engagement with the product. The marketing interaction is common to both roles as well, whereas the product manager is really focused on being a spokesperson that the marketing team can rely on to talk to the press, to evangelize internally, and to talk about the history and the roadmap of the product, so that everyone's aligned and on the same page, as well as being the final arbiter of all of the technical communications that go out, so that when marketing is creating materials or campaigns, that they're accurate in terms of what the customer value is, and the actual functionality of those features. Whereas product marketing is really a hub of information that coordinates all of the marketing activities, working with key roles within the marketing organization. In both product management and product marketing, you'll be engaged in cross-functional team leadership. And what that means is that you're working with teams across organizations without having direct responsibility for those people. So it will be the ability to influence without authority, because none of the people who you're directing in these cross-functional teams will report to you. It's really a matrixed organization, and you'll be managing people throughout these matrix organizations. In both roles, you'll be governed by the software development lifecycle, meaning that, the development that's going on in terms of software will be, there'll be testing, there'll be releases. Usually those will be on some kind of a cadence. That development methodology, whether it's agile or waterfall, will govern the release cadence often. And so both product management and product marketing are largely doing their planning around the software development life cycle and the release cadence. Both of these roles will also be engaged in competitive analysis, but the point of view is slightly different. Product management is really looking at the features and the feature set of competitors and the competitive landscape, maybe where competitors are going to, so they can make sure that the product is remaining competitive over time. In product marketing, you're focused more on understanding who the feature set, the messaging, and the marketing strategy are targeting in terms of target audience. And also you're focused on what that what the messaging mechanics are to go to an audience. So you want to, and especially if your competitors are messaging against you, it's important to understand those nuances and to keep abreast of what's going on there. Both roles are KPI driven, or driven by key performance indicators. And key performance indicators for product management tend to be around number of downloads, how many monthly active users or repeat monthly active users are engaged with the product. The number of people who are using a particular feature is also very important for product management, particularly when new features are being released. With product marketing, the KPIs are largely driven around customer engagement. So while product marketing might also be looking at monthly active users, it'll be more around an engagement model to see whether the product is growing over time, or if what the churn rates are. And also often KPIs are tied to revenue for the product in the product marketing world. Both roles will be also looking at pricing, but from slightly different lenses. Pricing in the product management world is largely related to understanding what the return on investment is, so that the development and the design and the resources that are going into a release are going to have some benefit from a revenue and customer retention perspective. Whereas the product marketing lens for pricing is really to look at where competitors are, and to understand what the price sensitivity is in comparison to other products. Product evangelism, as I mentioned before, with customer advocacy is important. So the product manager is focused on product evangelism, having it being really the representative of the product for the press, internally at the company. If the marketing team needs someone to be talking about what's going on with the product managers will also be working to represent their product across the larger product organization, often with the executive team, with customer support, and all of the different places in the company where somebody needs to really champion the product. Product marketing will also be product evangelists, but really will be focusing more on it can often play the same role really as product management, and representing and understanding what the narrative is, instructing different organizations within a company, what the proper language is to use, what the feature set are of new releases that are coming out. And with both roles, they're really the definitive source for external groups on the product. So if you have groups like the sales organization, or maybe your channels marketing organization, partnerships, customer support, any of the teams throughout the company that are looking for some definitive information can go to the product management or the product marketing team to get this day-to-day type of information. So let's dive a little deeper on the role of product management specifically. So with product management, you're really focused on building and defining the product. So the key relationships are with the project management team, which in Agile methodology could be called an Agile coach, a program manager, or can be referred to as operations or program management. Of course, your engineering teams and your quality assurance teams that are making sure that the product is meeting the standards that you've set, and are executing on the product in a way that is in line with what the vision of the product was to begin with. The product design team is helping you to work through complex issues, working through user interface issues, looking at data and research to make sure that you're on target with the user interactions and the look and feel, as well as many other aspects of the product, and working with engineering along with product management team. And of course, your product marketing team, who's working on the messaging and the go-to-market strategy to make sure that all the hard work that the design and the engineering and the project management teams are doing are being manifested in the marketing materials, and that you're hitting the right target audience for maximum impact. Also, important relationships are with the overall product organization, with the user research team who is gathering data to make sure that the product release is headed in the right direction and the features are prioritized correctly. And as you're going through an ideation phase at the beginning of a product cycle, to make sure that the prioritization that you've chosen for the release is correct. Also, the product analytics team is taking the data that you have coming in from product usage and from the user research team and lots of other places like marketing research, and helping you to synthesize that data to turn it into a strategy. The day-to-day, as I mentioned before, is driven by the software development methodology. So if it's Agile or Waterfall or Lean, all of these roles that interact with product management are driven by that same release cycle. And the orientation of the customer in product management focuses on how the customers will use the product and what their goals are. Let's take a little bit of a deep dive into product marketing and look at their relationship to other teams. So with product marketing, you're really focused on developing messaging, pricing, and marketing strategy or go-to-market strategy. So your key relationships are going to be with the marketing campaigns team, for example, who is driving the messaging for your company across multiple channels. You'll be working with them to make sure that the marketing and the messaging and the strategy for the product fits in with the overall campaigns and messaging of the overall company that you're a part of. Also, the product management team is very important, of course, because they're defining the features and prioritizing them. And we'll have a good idea about what the customer value is for each of the different features that are going to market. The operations team, this is really the equivalent of the project management team, but on the marketing side, it's going to be making sure that things are on schedule, helping you to unblock issues, can be helpful in facilitating meetings, and in communicating the overall marketing status to the rest of the organization. The creative teams have a very important role with product marketing. They're really similar to the role of product management and engineering, in that product marketing is setting the messaging and go-to-market strategy, and the creative teams are executing with visual messaging and copy that maps to the messaging briefs that are created by the product marketing team. So it's really an important, trusting relationship that needs to be developed. Again, the day-to-day is driven by the software development lifecycle, but the product marketing team will be negotiating, likely on a quarterly basis, but can be driven by events or other important milestones in the company and gathering multiple releases into one coherent message for maximum impact, and to make sure that you're really honoring the attention of the users of the product and making sure that you're conveying the important new features in a consumable way on a regular basis. Again, product marketing is focused on driving revenue, so there'll be activities that are supporting the sales organization, for example, and e-commerce activities, also search engine optimization, and so app store copy optimization to make sure that the maximum revenue is being driven by all of the different marketing activities. And so the orientation to the customer is really focused on the customer journey. And that customer journey is really how the customer engages with your product, and is really focused on, like, for example, discovering your product, trying it, using your product, retaining it, and then if you happen to lose a customer, how you might win them back. So it's really looking at this cycle and understanding where people are falling out of this funnel of the customer journey, and working with other teams across the company to really optimize all the parts of the funnel to make sure there isn't a lot of leakage. So some other comparisons between product management and product marketing. Again, product management is focused internally on developing requirements. That's kind of the primary focus. Product marketing is more externally focused on messaging and strategy. The work for product management is focused on prioritizing a feature backlog in the Agile methodology, whereas product marketing work is primarily focused on coordinating the efforts of the marketing organization. The documents that are created for product marketing are product requirements documents, or PRDs. They may manifest themselves as presentations or just user stories in Jira, but the components of PRD are very important to make sure that that's being conveyed to other parts of the organization. So the roadmap, timeline, and other important research, wireframes are all gathered in one place. Often that's a wiki. Documents created in the product marketing world are really more focused on things like messaging briefs and go-to-market strategy documents that sort of explain how you might tune your marketing channels based on your target audience. So for example, if you were doing an enterprise campaign that was focused on chief marketing officers, you probably wouldn't want to use Snapchat as a vehicle to reach them, because Snapchat users are not typically business users that are focused on enterprise type of concerns. It's really more personal. So for example, if you had a campaign that was focused on high school students, you might partner with the high schools and use Snapchat as a vehicle to reach them, since they're the target demographic that is using Snapchat. And then if you were going to do a campaign that was focused on small business, for example, you might choose local events that were informational to sort of gather leaders in the small business community together so that you could evangelize to them. Personas, as I mentioned before, in the product management world are focused on feature development and product usage, whereas the personas in product marketing are more focused on user engagement, purchasing behavior, and customer journey, as I mentioned before. When you're looking at day-to-day life of a product manager, they're really managing engineering and testing and adjusting the feature set accordingly based on the findings during development and the quality assurance process. With the day-to-day role of product marketing, you're really managing the voice of the product, the technical accuracy of the marketing materials. Analytics in product management are focused on product usage, downloads, and updates to the product, whereas analytics in product marketing tend to be focused on the customer journey, engagement, and launch KPIs. Entry-level salaries tend to be higher for product management than product marketing, but it definitely levels out later in your career. And so that means, of course, that in product marketing, your salary might be lower at the entry level than product management, but it does level out later. The role for product management is usually clearly defined. Product management has been around longer and is a clear part of the software development life cycle, whereas product marketing is relatively new in comparison. So it can often be ambiguously defined because it's not part of marketing and it's not part of product management. And since it's not closely tied to, as closely tied as product management to the product development life cycle, that can play a part in it being ambiguous. Thank you very much for your time. I hope that this comparison of product management and product marketing has been helpful in helping you to understand your colleagues in product management and product marketing, or if you're trying to make a decision yourself as to whether or not product management or product marketing is right for you, that this has been useful. Let's stay connected. You can follow me on LinkedIn, where I'll post information about courses I'll potentially be teaching or different talks that I'll be giving. You can also go to my About Me page, and if you like this talk, you can use my hashtag Maureen C. Keating. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Welcome to Product Marketing Alliance. We're home to everything a product marketer needs to learn, share, and succeed in their role. The definitive product marketing course, Product Marketing Core, is the perfect platform for experienced product marketers to broaden their existing knowledge, as well as educate newcomers beginning with their product marketing journey. Our community. We're home to more than 10,000 product marketers across the world, and every single day, tons of product marketing specific conversations go down. The community hasn't just been an absolute wealth of knowledge and answers, it's the place for constant inspiration. With a PMA membership plan, everything a product marketeer could possibly need is all in there, all in one place. Whether you want to grab a template, learn about how to become more strategic from product marketeers who've mastered it, sit back and watch hundreds of hours of presentations from some of the world's most trusted brands, our packages have got it all and more. We really are, dare we say it, the one-stop shop.
Hello, Product Marketing Alliance from Santa Monica, California, quarantine style. Nice to meet you all. My name is Scott Parrish, and I'm with LinkedIn Talent Solutions, which is a part of LinkedIn that is dedicated to helping companies hire and helping people like you and me find jobs. And what we're going to talk about today is rapid go-to-market. When I say rapid, I mean very rapid. We recently had an experience with the COVID-19 crisis where we built and launched a product in less than 10 days. And I want to share today some of that story, some of the learnings, and 5 principles that you can use to help speed up your go-to-market. In March this year, as the COVID-19 crisis was exploding in Europe and in North America, LinkedIn Talent Solutions started to receive some unprecedented requests for support. Organizations were asking for help with surge hiring at volumes that we had never heard of before. For example, in the United Kingdom, the National Health Service, the NHS, was looking for 30,000 doctors and 60,000 nurses. Organizations here in the US, like Doctors on Demand, were skyrocketing. They provide virtual medicine, so as everyone was sheltering in place, they needed 500 doctors to keep up with the demand for virtual medicine. These are just 2 examples of hundreds of organizations that were sending these types of requests. And it wasn't just for healthcare workers. Disaster relief not-for-profits were also really needing help to find volunteers. For example, in the Red Cross of Los Angeles needed 300 volunteers per day to help feed families and children in shelter-in-place who were reliant on the school system for food security. We quickly realized what was happening. It wasn't enough to flatten the curve. Organizations needed to also raise the line, and they were looking to LinkedIn for support to increase their capacity. They needed rapid surge hiring for frontline COVID-19 roles. And quite honestly, LinkedIn didn't have a solution that fit these huge types of demand. It's important to note too that LinkedIn is a very purposeful company. So it was a Sunday afternoon when I got a call from our head of social impact, who was pulling together a small group, product marketing, product, and social impact, to answer the question, what could we do to help the world? And here's what we came up with. We built a surge hiring solution with 5 pillars. First of all, we said, okay, there are 670 million people on LinkedIn. We want to know every one of them with the relevant skills, and we want to make it as easy as possible for them to connect with frontline COVID-19 roles. We analyzed anyone who had applied to a healthcare role in the last 5 years and used data science to model a new cohort of our members who had the right skills. We sent them alerts, and when they came onto LinkedIn, they had a completely unique experience that said, hey, we need your help, here are COVID-19 roles, this is how you can get involved. The second thing that we did is we just made our jobs completely free for the healthcare sector, for the supermarket sector, and for delivery. These were frontline essential services, and we tagged those jobs as well, particularly the ones that were on the front line of COVID-19, as urgent within our platform. This gives them a tremendous amount of promotion, so it makes it even easier for them to get the applicants that they need. Third, LinkedIn is at the center of a community of 60,000 talent acquisition companies who are hiring people on LinkedIn. So our own talent acquisition team said, we are pausing hiring and we are going to put our recruiters and we're going to dedicate them to helping hospitals fill the really hard to fill roles where posting a job is good, but you actually need to be actively reaching out in this market. The fourth thing we did for volunteering was we took our talent media. These are advertisements on the LinkedIn platform that can invite you to volunteer, and we immediately dedicated them to helping find between 50 and 2,500 volunteers in less than 2 weeks as a solution. We also did research within our platform to understand how our members wanted to volunteer, and I was so deeply inspired to hear that up to 64% of our members wanted to volunteer for COVID-19, and 22% of them were actively searching for opportunities within the last few weeks. And fifth and finally, 30 to 40% of healthcare hiring are done by search and staffing firms. So we took our very powerful LinkedIn Talent Insights solution, which helps companies build a very strong hiring strategy, and gave it for free to everyone in the staffing industry who could use it to help get these roles filled as quickly as possible. Just a few days later, these solutions were in full flight, and product marketing was the center, a glue of a go-to-market that was involving over 100 people across the organization. We had 80 different work streams, from product, marketing foundations, campaigns, activating our sales team, thinking about customer success, and making sure that our operational rigor was in place. It was truly inspiring to see how fast and how many people cared and showed up to help bring this solution to market. I'm very proud and very grateful for the team that did it, to say that we did launch within 10 days on time on April 1st. This was the fastest go-to-market in LinkedIn's history. And it's been approximately 2 months since then, and the impact has far exceeded our expectations. We've had 2.2 million healthcare candidates as part of the program. 190,000 new frontline industry jobs globally have come to the platform. We've been able to help more than 1,000 hospitals with that Recruitment for Good program, and really feeling hard to fill roles like doctors that normally take 45 days to fill a role like that, and we were getting it down for applicants screened in 7. And I'm so proud to also see that we are on track to source 800,000 volunteer candidates from our platform. These candidates are volunteering to go to disaster relief not-for-profits directly helping with COVID, whether that's on the front line delivering food or helping with women's shelters, for example, which we've seen an unfortunate boom from shelter in place. Okay, and now the important part. What did we learn, and how can we distill some of these lessons in order to speed up rapid go-to-market for all of you? The first thing that we learned is that PMM really is a choreographer and not a dancer. If you're in a program like this and you start to take on too much of the individual work, it becomes very difficult for you to play your unique role on the team, which is the glue, making sure that people know what the true north metrics are. What are our execution principles? What problems are we solving? Being very crisp about this. For what audience? What's out of scope for all of this? Sharing all of the different work streams that are happening, creating one-page summaries for those so that we aid communication and connecting dots across the whole program. Detailing the program's features, thinking about a rolling thunder launch, thinking about meeting cadence, bringing the team together, defining roles and responsibilities, and sharing out resources. These are the areas of a choreographer, organizing many different groups. And so one thing as a product marketer that you need to be really careful of when you're doing a program like this is that if you start taking on individual deliverables that yourself outside of the coordination of the wider team, you're running a real risk to burn yourself out and not be able to play the role which you uniquely have. The second principle is you as a product marketer need to obsess over the team health, the team's health. You are responsible for that. There are a few different frameworks that are particularly important. One is a decision-making framework very useful called the RAPID, and each letter stands for a different role. For example, the R is a recommender. In this particular role, you are the one who makes the final recommendation. You necessarily have the power to decide. That's the D, the decider. Roles in between include approvers, so somebody who can approve something. They can say no or veto something if it's, for example, breaking the law, but they can't necessarily say yes. They're more of an approver. The P is a performer, who's actually going to do this, And I is who do you collect input for as the recommender? How are you aggregating input from many different groups? We spent a tremendous amount of time in these 10 days making sure that everyone was very clear about these roles and responsibilities of a rapid. This very much aids speed of decision making, particularly in this kind of rapid go-to-market environment. The second big thing that you need to do as product marketers is drive collaboration. So you and your unique role at the 50,000-foot view, looking across all the different work streams, need to connect dots. And so I found myself constantly taking two groups, introducing them together, facilitating the meeting, helping us drive a collaboration agenda. And the last thing is you need to be really focused on recognition. The team is going to work really hard. A 10-day go-to-market or speeding up go-to-market is an exhausting process at the best of times. And it's your job to feed them with energy. And we all know the importance of recognition. So we were asking the executives, the top executives of the company, to come into our meetings and to thank the people who are working so hard around the clock in quarantine with their families and everything else. So that's a really important role. So I would say as a product marketer, second big principle that you need to focus on is just obsessing about the team's health, particularly roles and responsibility, collaboration, and deep recognition and celebration of the team around you. The next principle for go-to-market that I'd like to discuss is that product marketers should be responsible for driving innovation in every part of the customer experience. It is a huge pet peeve of mine that people think that innovation belongs only to product innovation, or that they think that right away. It's really important to note that innovation can come in every part, whether it's monetization, marketing, sales, customer success, or operations. And one of the things that really worked in this initiative is that it wasn't just product innovation. Free jobs, for example, and taking out the friction that it costs to pay for jobs, that's a monetization initiative. We also had operations and customer success innovation with our own talent acquisition team saying we can help out by filling some of these hard to fill roles. Again, not a product innovation. So it's your responsibility as product marketers to inspire and empower each owner of these different areas to innovate in their own way. Another phrase that we are fond of here at LinkedIn is that launch is about momentum and not a moment. So when you're doing a rapid go-to-market like this, we spent a lot of time thinking about where the long pole is. And the long pole is the part of the process that's going to take the longest to build. But what we didn't say is that we have to get everything together in order to nail one particular moment of launch. And instead we had a rolling thunder launch. We said some things can go out right away. If they're ready, every single day counts in the COVID-19 crisis, ship it now. And we began to ship things on a regular basis. So while April 1st was our announce from a PR perspective, we actually had a rolling thunder of launches that began days before and went for weeks afterwards. And this is a really important principle, this idea that launch is not necessarily about a moment. Don't try and hold everything back and get it all in one moment. Make it about momentum and how you continue to drive launch in this very critical stage after general availability or launch, called early scale. That's just as relevant to keep launching, keep pushing, as it is to build up the momentum through the other stages. And the fifth principle of rapid go-to-market that I wanted to discuss was solve very clear problems that your organization is already good at solving. What do I mean by this? It's important to realize that if you're going to move very quickly, you need to be pivoting your product market fit, not building something entirely from scratch. So many of the initiatives which we launched were modifications of existing infrastructure that we already knew worked, that we already had in place. We spent a lot of time over those 10 days, believe it or not, listening to our customers. We did pulse surveys to understand what they were looking for. We talked to reps. We talked to CHROs, the heads of HR for hospitals, to understand what they were looking for. So while we were building these solutions, we were also doing what we always do in product marketing, which was validating that product market fit. That's still critical even when you're moving fast. But I would say one important principle is to make sure that you're pivoting instead of creating completely new things. So we want to wrap up there. Thank you for listening to the story. If any of the frameworks in the presentation are useful, that's fantastic. If the 5 principles, principle number 1, PMM, you are a choreographer, not a dancer. Make sure you're focusing your energy on the very unique, high-value role that you can play, being the glue for all of the other groups in the go-to-market. Number 2, make sure that you are obsessed about the team's health, particularly about roles and responsibility, collaboration, and recognition. Number 3, make sure that you drive innovation in every part of the business model. Number 4, think about launch as momentum, not a moment. So get that rolling launch going as well. And finally, number 5, make sure that you are solving very clear problems that you're already good at solving. This has been really fun. Again, I'm Scott Parrish with LinkedIn, and I just want to say very briefly that product marketing and LinkedIn is a fantastic organization. We have about 100 product marketers at LinkedIn across different business lines. As an organization, there's very deeply purposeful impact. For example, as I mentioned, every day I think about how to get people hired. And the culture of product marketing there is very much about having a purposeful impact. Secondly, uniquely here, we are equally balanced between inbound product marketing, so driving a product strategy, understanding what the market wants and what we should build, as well as outbound product marketing, which is bringing the product to market. We're pretty balanced, and that's a very unique situation. And at LinkedIn, it's a highly strategic role. We very closely partner with product and BizOps and co-own the P&Ls, the strategies for our products. So it's an exciting place. If you're at all interested in product marketing at LinkedIn, please do add me. I'd love to talk more, and I'd love to hear your stories about rapid go-to-market and learn from you. Thank you very much.
Hello, Product Marketing Festival. I am so excited to be with you, and thank you for taking the time today to attend this session. I am Jeffrey Vosell, the Director of Product Marketing at Iterable, and I just want to take a moment to begin here to acknowledge what's happening in the broader world. Is just horrific, and I wanted to have this background here because I think it's super important that as product marketers, as individuals, as we think about being inclusive and sharing our message out to the broader world right now, we have a real opportunity to kind of lead the way, so to speak, there. I will stop it at that, but just wanted to say that, and super excited that you're here, and thank you for joining this session. So let's jump right in. So Tom Brady, now former New England quarterback, which still kind of breaks my heart a little bit. I am located in the Boston area, just a bit north of Boston. Is one of the best. He's been to, I think it's 9 Super Bowls, won 6, and all of his career kind of stats speak for themselves. And I don't need to kind of prove them out to you, so to speak. But really, the foundation of that really comes in all of the work that he does, all of the pre-work that he does before those games, studying game film. His dedication to practice, his home workouts, his diet and kind of eating habits, all of those things, ultimately results in peak performance within games, and hopefully kind of really winning some of those games. And I think it's pretty similar for product marketers. There's a lot of these foundational materials that we will put together dozens or hundreds or maybe even thousands of times throughout our careers. And it comes back to kind of reps and sets throughout a lot of these materials. And so I want to start there as we start our conversation about how to quarterback a product launch as a product marketer. First, it really all needs to start with market and buyer research. The foundation of your strategy has to be rooted in this research, and this is where we as product marketers unlock a ton of value. And a lot of other groups within the company, such as sales talking to your prospects and your product team talking to existing customers, can get really close to them. This is where we can really unlock a ton of value and get really close to the market as well. And so I was just at HubSpot before coming to Iterable, and I'm going to talk about a few key deliverables that the product marketing team delivers there, and that I foresee this being important to all product marketers, which are, number one, a total addressable market, and some sense of what is the market size, what can we realistically capture with this new product. I wouldn't produce a total addressable market for every launch. For a large scale launch, which we'll talk about launch sizing in just a few moments here, you should absolutely be doing this though. You should have buyer personas or maybe an ideal customer profile or ideal company profile that you're rolling out as well. In other words, who should your sales team be talking to and be prioritizing, and how should they be talking to them is massively important. And then I'm a fan of a great 2x2 matrix of any flavor or variety. But in this particular case, I think a competitive matrix can be super helpful because it can really visualize where you fit into the market versus where some of your competitors fit into the market. And I think it can really help with this next piece, which is positioning. If you wind up in one of those quadrants and all of your competitors wind up in another quadrant, then it's very clear that you should kind of lean into maybe that key area, assuming that area is important to your buyers and important to the broader market as well. I think it's important to have one centralized positioning document that talks about what your product is, how it fits into the market, what the messaging will be on your website. I'm not going to dive deeply into how to do positioning in this session. I think there's a lot of great sessions on narrative design and positioning and how to really nail that and get that right throughout the product marketing festival. And so I'm not going to talk deeply about this, but I did want to share this brief grid of what we did at HubSpot. And it all started with the shift that's happening in the broader world. And then went down to the product, who the enemy was. And the enemy, to be clear, didn't necessarily have to be another company. It could be an idea or even a long-held habit or structure or process that somebody was doing day in and day out within their jobs. Why that's bad for their business, what the solution was to that, and then how it tied into the brand. Ultimately, throughout all of our product launches, throughout our roles as product marketers, a lot of our messaging should naturally tie back into the broader brand messaging. And I think that's super important. And so that top and bottom line are incredibly important when it comes to this kind of positioning grid. And then third, a campaign kickoff. And this is a document, to be clear. This isn't a meeting. We will talk about a campaign kickoff meeting in just a few moments, but this document should include things like what the value props for individual features are, keywords that actual people are searching for. If you're using an SEO tool like SEMrush or Ahrefs or something like that, you can easily find some of that data. You can also just find it via Google as well. What's the pricing and packaging of your product or feature that you're launching? Who are some of the marquee customers that you are either A, targeting, or B, are already using this product? What are some goals and KPIs? And the list goes on. But what are essentially all of those foundational elements to your launch? At HubSpot, we gathered all of this campaign kickoff information into the same document that we put our positioning in. And that one document was, if memory serves me correctly, roughly 7 or maybe 8 pages because it included a ton of information. And the length is not important here. What is important is to say that there was one central document that everyone across the broader marketing team, everyone across maybe the sales team or various teams could go to find out key information about this launch and the campaign as it was really being kicked off. So the key deliverables that you'll kind of roll out here are a kickoff document and a go-to-market spreadsheet. This go-to-market spreadsheet should be broken out by team that's involved in the launch and should include very specific assets on each row, like, for example, a blog post on a row and maybe a webinar on a different row, things like that. It should include who's responsible for that, what the status is, and when it's due. Those things, project management is naturally a function of our roles to some extent, but if you do some of those things ahead of time, it will take a lot of the weight of that project management off of your plate and put it onto the spreadsheet. And then it's up to those individuals across those teams to consistently update that spreadsheet. And so with those materials, you have a really solid foundation for your launch. But that's not all you have to do. Those materials are a great first step, and they will get you a long way towards your launch and towards really quarterbacking that launch in a very successful way. But you need to be aligned with your team, and you need to also size up your launch in the right way. And so not every launch deserves the same level of intention or materials that you'll produce. I've certainly worked with a number of product managers in my career who are incredibly passionate about one specific thing that they're working on, or this new feature or functionality that they're about to roll out. And while that passion is admirable and in many cases warranted, you also need to balance that with what the impact on the business and what your customers will be. You shouldn't dedicate the full force, so to speak, of your marketing team for something that is really small, will have very little impact on your broader business. Some of the ways you can think about sizing a launch is these kind of 4 sub-bullets that I identified here, such as maybe revenue or the potential to capture some of the broader total addressable market, the impact on customers. And what I mean when I say impact on customers is really if a customer is going through their day-to-day workflow and they are using your product, maybe they get up in the morning, they check their phone, they grab a cup of coffee, they log into your tool, and they're familiar with like configuring an email in a specific way. If this new launch fundamentally kind of breaks the way they would have configured that email, or drastically changes the way they would have configured that email, then you need to do a good job notifying them well ahead of time and giving them the resources to adapt to that new structure, because you're affecting their day-to-day work, and that's super important. And you need to be empathetic and respectful of that. And the last thing here I put is percent of deals that the feature or product is raised in. If you're using a sales intelligence tool like Gong or something similar, it's super easy to just jump into that tool and do a quick search and find some of this data. And that can really be telling. There could be probably a dozen more sub-bullets here, but I think these 4 are a great starting point for you to think about as you think about how to scope out the size and scale of your launches. And if you take away one thing from this slide, it would be that this last bullet here. Please do not. I truly hope that you are not developing your launch sizing in a vacuum. You need to take a first shot at it based off what you think is right, but then you need to collaborate with others across product and maybe sales and across your marketing team as well, because they all need to be bought in. They all need to be aligned and excited about each of these launch tiers that you now will have once this document is produced. At HubSpot, we had 4 launch tiers. So we had P1 Plus, P1, P2, P3, and different things that went along with each of these launches. For a P1 Plus, it was a really large-scale launch. So HubSpot products are typically named with Hub in the name. So a recent example is CMS Hub, or the example before that was Service Hub. And so those launches get the full weight and support of the entire marketing team. They get the full weight and support of the sales enablement team and various teams across the business to truly drive success for that launch. And it really should be that way for your business. Whatever the top tier of your launches is, it should have the full weight and support of all of these teams, all of your go-to-market teams, to really help bring that to market in a strong way. Versus something like a P3 on the slide had very, very minimal support. In fact, a lot of product managers rolled out P3s themselves without a product marketer ever really touching it. Now, we would, of course, look at some of the copy and ensure that it was good to be customer facing, so to speak. But we weren't heavily involved in producing a ton of materials for kind of a P3 level launch. And there's a spectrum between a P1 plus and a P3, of course. And at least in my experience from my career history working at numerous companies in product marketing, probably about 70 or 80-ish% of launches kind of fall in the middle two buckets. And so it will really be important for you to define what's in those buckets and how you can really divide those up in a really great way. So now let's talk about alignment. You have your launch levels, you have some of your positioning and some of your foundational documents like the go-to-market kickoff document. You should, of course, be having regular and recurring one-on-ones with your product managers or the broader product team. And I'm sure that probably sounds obvious. Like you're like, yeah, of course. And you probably are already doing that, which is great. But it's important to get to know these people personally as well. They're not just at your company to talk about work or the project that they're working on or the launch that you're working on together. Get to know them a little bit. What do they really enjoy doing? What are some of their hobbies? Are they married? Do they have kids? Whatever the case may be, figure out what they're passionate about. See what are some of those passions that maybe you share and talk about those a little bit. That will help form a deeper relationship, a deeper bond that ultimately will make your launches better because you will get information that maybe you wouldn't have if not for that relationship. And I put a few key things here to discuss in one-on-ones. The list could certainly be a lot longer than just these 4 things, but I think it's very, very important to discuss these 4 things, which is what's the timeline for upcoming releases? I think PMs do a great job generally driving this, but you need to also balance that with how much time do you need to prepare the true go-to-market for this launch. And so if you can find out what the timeline is for alpha or beta and then the full launch, that's awesome. It's especially awesome if you have, weeks or months or however much time you need ahead of time that you're finding out about this. What are the roles and responsibilities? So this will differ per company. There's no perfect structure that will work for every single company and for every single person that maybe may listen to this. But there is certainly some overlap and some gray area between product managers and product marketing managers. And so think about, what that should look like. At HubSpot, for example, some of the product managers are responsible for some of the pricing and packaging and how things will roll out and which tier they will roll into. And so they will produce a feature matrix, for example. So I mentioned CMS Hub just a few minutes ago. And when we decided to roll out a brand new hub with 2 tiers, professional and enterprise tiers, the product team, of course, with input from product marketing and sales and executives and others, kind of defined what those tiers would be. And they configured this feature matrix that we helped kind of distribute out to the broader organization to help enable the sales team, to help various marketers write about these features and write about the different tiers. So there's a whole bunch of things there. Feature matrix is probably a small piece of that, but you really should think about what those roles and responsibilities should be. And it's not about being territorial. It's really about kind of optimizing your work together so you can complement one another. As well. And lastly, I put here examples of alpha or beta customers. The sooner you can get a customer into a product or using your new feature or product, the better off you will be. It's just my personal opinion that you shouldn't be probably rolling out a really large scale launch like a P1 plus style launch without at least 1 case study, if not 2 or 3 case studies, as well as logos of customers who are using that product. I think that's incredibly important. Social proof is incredibly important in today's day and age. So identifying some of these people early will serve or I should say pay dividends down the line. The next team that you really need to have great alignment with is your broader marketing team. So your marketing team needs to get bought into the larger style launches that you have. And when you develop that launch sizing, so P1 plus, P1, et cetera, you should also join that together with a set of baseline activities. In other words, what activities is your marketing team going to do for each launch tier. So are you going to produce a blog post and a product video and a product page and partner training and a sales training and all of these various things? I mean, the list is endless, right? But what are you going to do for each of those launch tiers? And regardless of how you tier it, whether it's t-shirt size or numbers or something else, you don't need to do all of those things for a really small scale launch as much as you certainly do for a very large scale launch. And that's why getting that buy-in from other groups is incredibly important, because once you have that baseline set of activities, once you have the launch tiering, you suddenly have this like great process throughout the organization that you and the product team are working on a launch. You agree that it's a P2, let's just say, and you have this standard set of activities that you can do. And again, I want to be clear that this isn't cookie cutter. This is just a starting point for your launch, that you know what you can do for the launch versus what is only can be done for the launch. So I just want to make that clear. As far as groups that you should work with, demand generation is, of course, incredibly important. Our launches, to a large extent, can be revenue-driving activities. And so when they are, you really need to work very closely with your demand generation team. Think about ways that the pain points that your product is solving for can tie out to the broader marketplace without being centered solely around your product, right? And work with the demand generation team around that. Direct mail lately has been incredibly successful. Webinars, virtual events, especially in a day and age where we are all in quarantine right now, is certainly kind of one lever there, but there are so many levers that you can kind of pull and talk about with your demand generation team that this is important. For your customer marketing team, they're going to be curious about a lot of things. They're going to be curious about, does this impact existing customers' contracts? Does this change existing functionality that they have? Is there a cross-sell or upsell opportunity? Is this an add-on that they can add to an existing product that they have? Do we need to notify the entire customer base? Is this a small segment of the customer base? Legally speaking, do we need to notify, our customers? And if so, does that need to be a transactional email versus kind of a standard marketing email? And all of those questions that I just kind of listed off are a subset of probably the questions that your customer marketing team will ask for you. If you prepare some of those foundational documents that I mentioned ahead of time, the campaign kickoff, the launch tiering, the positioning, you should have answers to a lot of those questions. Maybe not all, but you should have answers to a lot of those questions ahead of time, and you won't need to kind of scramble last minute to find answers to these. And you'll be better set up for success when you go to customer marketing and talk about the thing that you're launching or the new feature or product that you're launching. Now I want to talk about partner marketing as well as social and content marketing. Partner marketing is really an untapped resource, I think, for a lot of product marketers. I think, frankly, we could dedicate an entire session just on this topic and how to do it really well. And if you work with other technology partners, other companies, or maybe some agencies like a PR agency or a web agency, consider how you can go to market together with them and what's in it for them. Is it lead sharing? Is it usage of both of your tools? Is it sales of both of your tools and packaging those together to some extent? And consider what the kind of story between those can look like. Because if you're going to market with especially a broader company like maybe Slack or something like that, then they have an incredibly broad reach, incredible customer base. And so think about ways that you can do kind of co-marketing right together. If you're going to market with other agencies, like service-driven agencies like PR or maybe website design or things like that, consider how you can go to market with them too, and how they can maybe write on your blog or consider things like that to really get the word out about your launch as well. And for social and content marketing, I put a few questions here because I think it's important to focus in on your story and your narrative here, more so even than just your product. Now don't get me wrong, both are incredibly important, but You want to balance those, right? If you just share your product page out on Twitter, you're probably not going to get a ton of engagement from that, versus if you share more story-driven format through maybe audio or video or short headlines, things like that, you will naturally generate more engagement. You can certainly drive those folks back to maybe blog content or back to your product page, but just directly sharing your product page may not have the desired results. And so I think these 3 questions can help you identify how to work with those folks and how to align with your team on the social and content marketing team. And of course, it doesn't stop with just product or marketing. You need to align with sales as well as services and support. For sales, I think a lot of times product marketers wait until they have something relatively polished, or it feels like it's maybe perfect to some extent. I think that's actually that's waiting too long. I think what I would do is, if your company is at a size or scale where you have a sales enablement team, pull in a few of those folks, or pull in one of those folks early on in the process. Have them get a demo of the product, whether it's from the PM or yourself, and share with them where your positioning, where your messaging and narrative is at that point, because they can give feedback, right? They're maybe demoing the product day in and day out, and they can give you really great feedback and points to think about very early on. And then talk about different enablement resources that they will need to really find success in pitching this product, whether that's battle cards or pitch decks or whatever the case may be. Talk about various things that you can enable them with to ensure that they find success. I think just as important is enabling services and support. They are getting questions day in and day out from customers about, does your product do this? Or hey, I wanted to use your product in this way, and I'm not quite sure if I can do that. All of those various questions, your customer support and customer success team are really the front line for. And so if you bring them in early and effectively let them just ask a ton of questions of you, give them a little bit of context about what the new product is, and then just let them ask questions of you, and maybe have the PM with you as well. That can really uncover a lot of things that maybe you didn't think about in your narrative or your positioning or your launch plan, or maybe the product manager didn't think about as well from their side of things. So my recommendation is get all those questions on the table super early, think about them, and then create like an FAQ document based off everything that you've heard, not only in that meeting, but the meeting with sales and other meetings that you've had as well leading up to that point. And then publish that document internally, because it's likely that executives or others throughout the organization will have questions as well. And that can really help bring everybody on the same page. I would be remiss to have a session about quarterbacking a product launch without talking about how to communicate up. And whether you are a junior product marketer or a director of product marketing, or anywhere in between, communicating up is incredibly important to not only your career, but the success of your launch as well. And so a few tips that I just want to briefly cover here, which are review your positioning and messaging with key executives early. If you're at a size company, or just even if you're at a company where executives like being involved in the process, this will be incredibly important. At HubSpot, a company I was just at, we went through a positioning process where the first, the product marketing team would kind of review it, and then the marketing executives would review it, and then even the founders of the company would review it. And that was a great thing to be totally candid, because we got really great feedback in each of those sessions where we really refined and honed our positioning and our narrative and our story. So if you're at a company where maybe the founders really like to be involved, then don't shy away from involving them. Get them involved early, because the earlier you get that feedback, the more you will mitigate last-minute changes to your launch plan and to your launch messaging, which can have a pretty wide downstream impact across a lot of various teams. And if your executive team is learns in different ways or likes seeing materials in different ways versus just maybe text on the slide, then consider like mocking that up in different ways. For example, at HubSpot, we really liked mocking up things in kind of a web page format because it visually brought it to life to a large extent, and it visually showed here's what this is going to really look like. So consider different ways that your executives want to receive those materials. You should send a weekly or maybe bi-weekly email this should go to the whole go-to-market team, as well as some of the executives who are really bought into this launch. That email should include a stoplight chart. In other words, what is done or for the launch, like what percent of materials are done for the launch, what is in progress, what percentage of materials are in progress, and then what percent of materials are maybe blocked or not yet started. So if you even just have those 3 buckets, that will bring a lot of transparency throughout the entire project. And if you're sending that to the entire go-to-market team, as well as the executives, that will go a long way to really helping you stay on track and clear out roadblocks as well. And as you get closer to the launch, we'll talk about this in a slide in a few minutes, but as you get closer to the launch, you should be having regular and recurring kind of go-to-market team meetings that you should naturally pull executives into as well. All right, so we've talked about the foundational materials on kind of one hand. We've talked about aligning with teams, which is kind of the second piece of that. And now, as the quarterback of this launch, how are you going to execute that strategy? Let's talk about a few key ways of doing that. The first is when you kick off the go-to-market effort, you should get the entire go-to-market team in one meeting that you, as the product marketer, lead. And by the way, just to be clear, when I say go-to-market team, what I'm really referring to is the people that you should kind of have in this meeting are obviously yourself. You should be leading the meeting. You should have the product manager in that meeting, or if this feature or product rollout encompasses multiple PMs, then pull them all in to that. I mean, you don't necessarily want a team of 10 PMs in that meeting, and so if it's that large, then maybe define a few people who can kind of speak for the group. But if it's a smaller group, then pull those 1 or 2 individuals in. You should have kind of functional heads from various groups, such as customer marketing and partner marketing and demand generation, assuming those are relevant and important to your launch. You should have somebody from sales enablement or services or success enablement in your group as well. If your company is at a size or scale where you don't have those enablement functions yet, maybe talk to a rep or 2 or a CSM or 2 and ask for their help being kind of the figurehead for their group for this launch, and pull them into those meetings. Ask for essentially an hour of their time per week to really help you kind of align around that. And in this very first meeting, what you should go over is, what is the product? And give the PM some kind of airtime, so to speak here. Let them present what the product is, why they're developing it, and then you should jump in with who's a target customer, what's the positioning, what's some of the pricing and packaging breakdown. Share any of that user or market or customer research that you've done so far. This is incredibly important because it'll get everyone on the same page. And if you have launch goals figured out at this point, then definitely share those. This will help kind of bring everyone together onto the same page. You should naturally establish a regular cadence of these meetings. If you find out about a launch 6 months ahead of time or 12 months ahead of time, you can probably have those meetings a little less frequently to start, and then have them kind of ramp up in terms of frequency as you get a bit closer. But the importance here is establish some sort of regular cadence that works for you and the team that will naturally kind of lead you to a great place. And then third here is establish maybe a go-to-market Slack channel if you use Slack, or if your company leans a little bit more heavily on email. Specifically, if you use like G Suite, then establish a Google group which will have a shared email address that you can email, and it will kind of go out to everybody and share updates in that way. I have never worked on a single launch in my career that hasn't had some sort of changes throughout the life cycle, whether it's last minute, whether it's somewhere in the middle, whatever the case may be, and for whatever reason it is, it doesn't even matter what the reason is. Communicating those changes out to the broader group and the broader go-to-market team are incredibly important. And doing that in some easy ways, such as this team meeting or a Google group or a Slack channel, will make your life a whole lot easier as a PMM, rather than trying to go individual by individual or team by team. Driving accountability. If I had $1 for every PMM who has told me, but I'm like not a project manager, I would be a rich person, and I may not even be delivering this presentation. No, in all seriousness, I think as product marketing managers, we do have some responsibility for driving accountability across the entire go-to-market team. And I think where a lot of PMMs get held up is they feel the need to constantly check in with people on how are they doing, where's that asset at, and if you have kind of a standard and centralized resource that is agreed upon across the broader go-to-market team, that's agreed upon across maybe some of the VPs or directors of marketing or across the organization, then you don't need that maybe level of kind of project management that some folks are thinking of. All of those details on what you're doing for that launch should be in one central place, whether it's a spreadsheet or a wiki page or something like that. I prefer a spreadsheet. I think it's a great resource for it. And then there should be a DRI assigned to each of those. And then I mentioned the go-to-market team meetings. So whether you're holding those weekly or biweekly or whatever the cadence is, you should reinforce with everyone who is a part of that meeting and a part of the go-to-market team that they need to update the spreadsheet before that meeting. That will be important. And as a part of reinforcing that will naturally relieve a lot of the project management that you as the PMM have to do, because you will constantly have kind of an up-to-date spreadsheet week over week over week that you can show to your boss or some of the company executives or anyone that's kind of curious about this launch. All right, so it's not just about aligning the team, but how do we measure and communicate results is incredibly important. It's certainly in my career, I've seen a lot of launches get, let's just say 80% of the way through before we decide kind of goals. And I think that can be dangerous, right? Because you want to define what activities you're doing, and those activities that you're doing across marketing should align with your goals. If you have a launch that is around user generation, then you should really be aligning a lot of your paid spend and a lot of your kind of broader marketing around user generation versus kind of paid lead generation. So based off what those goals are, if you have a product ops team or a revenue ops team or a marketing ops team, or maybe a business intelligence team or even a web strategy team, maybe get a meeting on the books with you and some of those folks to set up the appropriate tracking, the appropriate lead routing or user routing, and some of the reports to kind of capture a lot of that. And then try to take some of those individual reports that they're putting together and put it into a centralized dashboard. Regardless of what tool that you're using, like maybe Google Analytics or Looker or Amplitude or something similar to that nature, if you have one central place that you can direct everyone to find out about the success of that launch, that will go a long way and really help you share the results of that launch, but also will keep everyone on the same page as well, and it should reduce any confusion across the team. For your largest launches that you have, so whatever the top of that scale is for you, I would recommend communicating on a cadence of day of launch. And so if your product is launching at, let's just say 9 a.m. in your respective time zone, then at 5 p.m. or close to that in your time, send an email out to some of the executives as well as the entire go-to-market team involved in that launch with day of launch metrics. And some of these day of launch metrics have to be naturally kind of top of the funnel focused, such as number of maybe views to the product page or shares on your social content or things like that. Because especially if you have a longer sales cycle, you may not have kind of deeper metrics to share at that point. You should then share another update 1 week in, and this update should go a little bit deeper into kind of some of the core business metrics, assuming they're available at that point. You should then share a 1 month update and then a 3 month update. And by the way, for every business and every sales cycle, it may be slightly different. If you have a very long sales cycle, that's maybe 90 days or 6 months even, then you probably want to change this cadence a little bit, and you probably actually want to add maybe a 6 month email in that case. So everyone across the entire go-to-market team and across your executive team has a full picture of how that launch impacted the business. I think that's incredibly important. And your job doesn't stop when a product is out the door. In fact, we could have another session dedicated to driving adoption of the product once that product is out the door. But I think for product marketing teams like mine at Iterable and the team at HubSpot as well, very launch focused. The product team is kind of cranking away and developing some really amazing things. And so you stay very, very focused on launches, which can develop and turn into this great cadence for the product marketing team. And so because of that, you really need to think about leading a retrospective essentially. So you should get the entire go-to-market team together in one meeting and lead a retrospective somewhere between 3 and maybe 4 weeks post-launch. You want it to still be pretty fresh in their mind without being too early. I think you should do this next thing in all meetings, but it's especially important in this meeting where everyone needs to feel very safe and feel empowered to be incredibly candid in this meeting. Otherwise, you're not going to learn and be able to apply those learnings to the next launch. There's never been a launch in my career. I've worked on dozens and dozens and dozens of launches throughout my career so far. And there's never been one single launch that's been absolutely perfect. A few have been pretty close, I think, or at least I hope. But there's never been one that's been totally perfect, and that's okay. I want to strive towards making each successive launch a bit better than the previous launch was. And the way that we do that is through these retrospectives and through learning. And the only way to truly do that in the right way is get that feedback from other people, learn what not only you are doing, but what the broader team is doing well and could be doing better. And that one meeting can really be great. And I think it's important to have everyone in that meeting because you may hear something that you should be doing from another member of your team, and those ideas can bounce off of a few members, and it can turn into something really great or a great conversation. Once you have all of those learnings in one central place, whether it's like a Google Doc or something like that, share it with your PMM team, especially if your PMM team is 2 or more people. It's likely that the other person or other individuals across your team are working on a launch while you are kind of leading a retrospective for the launch that just happened. And if that is the case, then they can take some of those learnings and apply it to their own launch so that they can improve. And then, when they have a retrospective, share those learnings with you for probably another launch that maybe you may be working on at that point. So it's incredibly important to share this across the team. So I'll wrap up this session by saying, first, set yourself and your team up for success by starting with the fundamentals, reps and sets, right? Reps and sets. We're going to do this over and over and over again in our careers as PMMs. It starts with research, and then it goes into positioning and the campaign kickoff. And doing this in the right way will be incredibly important. If you do this really well, you should have a pretty smooth sail into the launch. It's, of course, a lot of work, but doing these fundamental things up front will set you up for success. Second is choose the right size launch. Choose it based off the impact to your customers and the impact to the broader business. Of course, take people's opinions into account when you're thinking about this, but don't solely base a launch size based off one person's opinion or one person's passion for that specific thing. Third, organize your go-to-market team. Figure out who you need in that launch team. If this launch has a ton of potential to capture new business, then you need demand generation team in there. You need your content marketing team in there, and make sure to get them bought in. If you need to meet with them one-on-one, go ahead and go do that, and then bring them into the broader team meeting. But it's super important to get them involved and have a broader kickoff meeting between everyone that will be involved in this launch. Fourth, and I can't stress this enough, get those goals defined early. At HubSpot, we found it was great to have one kind of primary goal, whether that's revenue-based, whether that's user-based, whether it's something else, and then a few kind of secondary success metrics as well. And I think that's a structure that works really, really well. Fifth, communicate broadly via check-in meetings or Slack groups, and also think about communicating up to executives and managers leading up to the launch. Part of your job is ensuring that you are kind of pushing the entire team forward. You're quarterbacking that. You're setting the plays. Then you're driving those plays through with the team. So ensure that you're communicating broadly, because that's how you take the strategy and build it into some of the tactics that will ultimately define the success of your launch and turn this into kind of a winning launch campaign. So if you take away anything from this session, I really hope it's these 5 things. As I mentioned a bit earlier in the session, I believe I will be producing templates. I'm working on them right now at Iterable for kind of some of the standard foundational things. I think those are super important, the research, the positioning, the campaign kickoff. And if you'd like access to those, don't hesitate to reach out to me via LinkedIn or email or Twitter. And I'd be happy to share those once they're available. They're still a work in progress right this second, but I would be totally happy to share those once they are available. If you do have questions, feel free to reach out to me. Thank you so much for attending this session. I hope you truly enjoy the Product Marketing Festival. Thank you to Richard and Byrony and the entire Product Marketing Alliance team for organizing this. I have certainly learned a ton already from other product marketers, and I am super excited to be a part of it. Thank you again for attending the session. I hope it was helpful. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. Thanks.